All right, we will get started. It is our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. All right, then we'll move on to a roll call. Counselor Egan.
I'm here.
Counselor Pillsbury.
Present.
Counselor Lawrence.
I'm here too.
Counselor Pilch.
Here.
Counselor Brown.
I'm here.
Counselor Smith.
Present.
Counselor Benoit is here and present. All right, our third order of business is to waive the reading and accept as printed the June 24th, 2025 meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we will move on to our announcements. We are
Good work by
accepting.
Chris to get those done and ready for this meeting, by the way. I mean, that was just last week that that meeting was.
Great job. She actually did it on her. She tried to call it a vacation day, but she was doing that on Saturday.
Oh, no.
Before, yeah, she did a nice job.
Yeah, I mean, the meeting just happened 7 days ago, and we have
Yeah.
a 10-page list of minutes, so that's remarkable.
It's a quick
worth mentioning.
turnaround. So Chris, I hope you're enjoying your vacation. All right, so we are accepting applications for a vacancy on the Board of Assessment Review. This board hears appeals of the town tax assessor. This is a good fit for a retired professional who has served in construction, development, or banking positions. Please contact the clerk's office for more information. The council will be holding a parking workshop on Tuesday, July 29th at 6 p.m. at Freeport Community Services to discuss paid parking regulations and other related issues. Friendly reminder that the use of consumer fireworks is prohibited in the town of Freeport this holiday weekend and always. Independence Day holiday hours for the town hall will be closed on Thursday, July 3rd. The Freeport Community Library and the transfer station are closed on the 4th. The town of Freeport has been unable to find suitable location for the safe launching and viewing of fireworks on July 4th. There will not be fireworks on the 4th of July this year in Freeport. We hope to hear from residents as we continue to work with various community partners to explore the possible return of 4th of July fireworks in 2026. The all-new electric tool lending library features a variety of electric yard care tools that residents can borrow for their personal residential use. Freeport residents are able to borrow tools free of charge as long as they are at least 18 years of age and have an active library card with the Freeport Community Library. For more information on how to obtain a library card, visit the Freeport Community Library website. The program tools include leaf blowers, hedge trimmers, string trimmers, and push mowers, and more. All right, that is it for me. Any announcements from the rest of council? Councilor Egan.
I'm not going to be available on the July 15th council meeting. It's my 1 week a year vacation.
All right, we'll
Sorry.
allow it.
I thought I had it set right to be on an off week, but I guess I didn't set that up right.
That's okay. Happens to the best of us. Councilor Smith.
I just want to express that thank you to everyone who made the Freeport Oyster Festival a success last weekend. While driven by Visit Freeport, who works all year long to bring visitors to Freeport, I know the Oyster Festival also takes a number of business owners and volunteers throughout the whole community to make that happen. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who worked so hard to pull that off, despite the rain this weekend.
Great. Any other announcements? All right. So we'll move on to information exchange up here for counselors to share information on recent conversations with residents, committee meetings, other items that have come up in the last week because we met last week. Councilor Pilch.
I have an update from the Special Projects Committee, which has been functioning as a party planning committee of late. As you know, Buston's Island invites us out in August for a meeting out there. And last year, Councilor Egan had the great idea to invite them over to Freeport. We settled on a day, I think you all saw by email, July 15th. So John's idea to invite them is on the one day when John's
Brilliant.
not going to be here.
Two there.
But on the 15th, from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock before our meeting, we're going to be hosting them here. We met to organize how we're going to feed them, and we've got it mostly sorted out, but we also thought it would be nice for the council to bring some desserts or fruit salad or things like that to supplement the food that we're going to buy. So we have a few people signed up for dessert already, but if anyone wants to sign up for fruit salad or some other kind of salad, please let Caroline know. She's the menu coordinator for the event. And then by the time they get here to Town Hall, it'll probably be closer to 4:15 because they're going to take the boat over. But other than that, it should be nice, and hopefully it'll be nice out. We can host them outside around some picnic tables and tents and things. That's the idea. So if you want to bring food, let Caroline know in the next couple of days.
Would we be looking at starting the council meeting at 6:30?
No, we think we could do it at 6.
6? Okay, good.
With interest in getting folks home to Buston's at a reasonable time as well.
Great. Any other updates?
Sophie, are you going to talk about RFP change? Should I mention that? Municipal Facilities Committee was supposed to meet tomorrow to review the responses to the RFP for the public safety engineering study. We are going to do that instead at our regular meeting, which is on the 14th of July. So the 2 hours that you had on your calendar for tomorrow, you have back.
Okay. Anything else? All right, and on our agenda is a Metro update from Bill Rickson, but he is unable to be here tonight, so he is joining us on the 15th. And I think you told him we had a late start, so make sure.
Yep.
We'll want to make sure he knows.
Yep.
He'll be earlier than we anticipated. Okay. So then we'll move on to the town manager's report. Sophie?
Happy July. The one thing I do want to make sure we point out is today is the 1-year anniversary of Caroline Pelletier taking over as the assistant town manager, and just really want to recognize the incredible work that she's done transitioning away from planning and into the assistant town manager position. When you all thought I had an okay idea, I thought I was on the right track, but I've been pleasantly surprised. It's been even better than I thought it could be. So thank you for.
Is it also the anniversary of our development director?
Oh my gosh, it is. 1 whole year under our belt with our development director. I think the 3 of us are making quite a team with a lot of support from other staff, but it's a great anniversary to celebrate. As I am sure folks are aware, over the last week we've had lots of correspondence about silver bullets. I have not directly responded. It's my understanding some counselors are responding. My thought was, given the amount of response we're having, we would probably do a little recap of this meeting on social media, but also do a kind of a BCC to everybody who responded, which we can get out this week, if that works for you. I'm excited to report that it looks like you will likely have an executive session and an item to approve a 3-year contract with the Maine Association of Police. So I'm excited. That moved pretty quickly. Had some great ideas from counselors that really helped move that along. Beyond that, it's busy. Earl and I spent some time today on a field trip down in the village of South Freeport. So we stopped at the wharf. We've had an individual concern that we didn't have an accessible porta potty down there. Sure enough, we did not have an accessible porta potty. So we're going to order one of those to have come in. The other issue that we've got down in the village is a lot of overgrowth of vegetation, especially in the area between South Freeport Road and the kind of more towards the water. So Earl is working with Jessica Chadbourne, our assistant planner, to get mailing address labels, and we're going to be sending out a notice to folks, letting them know that we are looking in that area where have some sight distance issues and encroachment on the road. Although we have fairly wide rights of way there, we really only want to try to recapture 3 feet from the pavement or so to give enough space for people to get off the road when they're walking. So the way that normally works is we send out a message saying, hey, this is a concern of ours, and we plan to come by in the next month or so, usually more like or so. Please contact Earl with any questions, and if you want to take care of, trimming your lilac bushes back or your whatever, here's the time frame that you have to do that. So it gives everybody, everybody gets the same notice. We'll go right to their house. Beyond that, it's busy, and we're short-handed because it's great weeks to take holidays, so we're kind of cycling through. We closed the books with very little fanfare yesterday. Becky Hayslip, our deputy, did a great job. So, yes.
Just a quick question back to the South Freeport Village and your visit with Public Works Director. Was there any context or discussion there about parking and how parking right in that sort of last 2 blocks of South Freeport Road can affect traffic and things like sight distances and pedestrian? I had a couple of comments from some local residents about changing the orientation, and I can't remember now because it was a few weeks ago, if it was the back out parking to parallel or the parallel to back out. I'm not sure which one it is, but.
Like by the wharf?
No, up
No.
on South Freeport Road.
Like where the market is?
Yeah, along
Yeah.
that right away from the 4-way stop sign up to Park Street, probably.
I haven't heard anything about that. Earl, do you?
Yeah,
have
okay.
you?
I haven't heard anything about that, but that area is no parking.
No parking at all? Huh, okay.
Only
I'll go back and get my facts straight on my message and then come back to you with a more
When-
coherent feedback.
When you know exactly what the
the issue
question
is,
is, we will be right on it.
Right, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Sophie? All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our public comment period. This is limited to 3 minutes for folks who are here in the room for items that are not on the agenda. If folks are interested in speaking during public comment, they can walk up to the podium. And just please introduce yourself and where you live.
Hi, everyone. My name's Amanda Kent. I'm a Freeport resident down on off of Lambert Road on Crow's Nest. I have a business, Maine Wicked Goods, on Route 1, and have worked very much with all of you. I'm here today because I am speaking on behalf of Thais de los Reyes and her husband, and some of the issues that they've had with the whole food truck cart issues with the town. I've been involved with this since 2019 when we chose to host her at our shop, only to find out that Route 1 was not acceptable for food trucks at all unless we were an artisanal food and beverage location. So we worked very hard to get that changed and to work with the planning board and to work with Caroline. We were only able to host her for 30 days max and created an event around that. But she was so well received that we fought the good fight with her to get Route 1 accepted. Since then, we've come to realize that even though Route 1 is a great place for some businesses, it's not a great place for a lot of businesses, and downtown is where you really need to be if you're going to be a business that is depending on foot traffic. We don't have it down there. We don't have sidewalks. Even between the hotels and Maine Beer is the really only place. So she's worked with the council. I've worked with the council with her, and a lot of you were on the council at that time. Sophie wasn't even here. And it's important for you guys to know that we've done everything correctly and right according to trying to deal with this issue in Freeport. The problems that there were previously were from way back when, were back in the teens, to be honest, when they first decided to put the food truck limitations in as they are. Athena's Cantina and the food truck / really a trailer that she has been last weekend approved because of the Oyster Festival to be in the downtown station location, the village station. She's been there before, and they have requested that she consider a lease to be there all the time, at least as a trial effort through the summer and into the fall. I know that, Sophie, you wrote to her.
When you say they, who's they requested? The owner of the property?
The owners of the property.
Okay, thank you.
And she's in the process of negotiating with them for a rate and potentially an in-store location, an interior location. So if people purchase something from her, they can then go into that location to sit and eat if it's raining or, want to relax. So she would potentially be leasing in that space as well as the space that she has on Route 1. She came to you guys last month, and was in public comment, and nothing's come of it. I know that, Sophie, you wrote back to her and basically said, yeah, you've got to, if you're going to change anything, you've got to go to the planning board. Well, what happened last time when we did that, she ended up having to get a brick and mortar restaurant when she was strictly only a food truck, and pushed her plans ahead by 5 years to do that. And it was extremely expensive and not very fruitful, considering how, I know my time's up. Anyway, I would like to ask, because we've done this before, to request for the council to consider allowing Athena's Cantina food truck / trailer to have a special compensation to be allowed a trial for the tourist season to be located in Village Station. As of right now, that's private property completely, and she can lease that space from them, but according to the town, she wouldn't be allowed to have her food truck / trailer, which is really only a trailer, and doesn't fit into the peddler category because of its size and the fact it has a kitchen interior. So I just really am irked by the whole thing, and that's the reason why I'm here, and she's running the restaurant tonight, so that's the reason why she's not here. She came last time to try to get things on. She was going to be on one of the agendas, which wasn't an appropriate agenda, and I just feel like she's getting the runaround. So I'm here to request the council to make a special occurrence. She's a town resident. She's the only food truck in town. She's worked very hard, Caroline can attest to that, to try to clean up all of our zone and codes and everything else. And I just feel like she needs an atta-girl from the town council, which this would allow them to do. It's frustrating to be on this side and to see this happen, and to be, in a small way, a part of the whole thing. She's donated, the family has donated so much of their time and effort to Freeport businesses, like the Historical Society and nonprofits. She sold more than 3/4 of the tickets for the Women's Club for our raffle. So that's our fundraising. I guess I leave it to you to discuss that and figure out what to do about this issue.
Yeah. And I want to say I give a lot of appreciation to Thais, because I know she works very hard, and she's here fighting for her business all the time. And I know myself and a lot of counselors are rooting for her, for sure, absolutely. And I know the last time you guys went through this process, I have a lot more faith because we have Brett here, we have Sophie here, who are very capable staff, and I know staff is trying their best to work with her, and it's a convoluted process and system, and there's a lot of different stakeholders to balance, especially in downtown. So I know it's going slow, but I know there's a lot that the town is working on, especially downtown, so it will just take a little bit of time to get there.
Yeah.
And I do want to open it up.
We've been through that. I've done that. We've gone through the planning board. We did that.
Yeah.
We changed the code for Zone 1.
Yeah.
We were able to change the code, and all of the planning board and all of the council members at the time were very supportive of this concept, and they all said, we need to work on this for downtown. This is a private location where she's not on street parking, and
Yep.
the truck is going to be there the whole time, not leaving.
So I do want to bring it up to the council to discuss, so thank you. Yep.
Thank you for listening to me. I'm sorry, it just frustrates me to no end that someone who is so giving to this town and so committed to Freeport keeps getting the shaft.
Yep. And so it's public comment, so council doesn't have to discuss, but I do want to open it up in case there's thoughts or
I
questions.
just have one
Yeah.
question, and thank you, Amanda and Nick, for all you guys have done as well, in addition to supporting Thais and just running your business. The issue where she wants to be at Freeport Village Station, is it a site plan issue, a food truck issue? Do we know, or do we need to look into that?
Site plan has been approved.
Site plan's been approved, so is it just the food truck?
Do you want to take that, Brett? I know you've been working on this.
Brett Richardson, Development Director for the town. What we've ran into is the current ordinance requires a food truck to have an event associated with it. And so that requires a little bit of planning. It requires, in this case, Village Station, the property owner to sign off on that and be a party to the application. And I think what we've bumped into is that when the ordinances were written, before me, 5, 7, 10 years ago, there was a pretty healthy discussion around how to bring food trucks downtown, and the consensus was that an event was essential because the brick and mortar folks who have restaurants downtown had an opinion and felt like when a food truck comes in without bringing more foot traffic associated with an event, that they're actually impacting the brick and mortar business. And so what we have are ordinances that reflect that discussion at that time. And I think,
At that time.
yeah, I think frankly, it's a policy discussion. I think staff works hard within the current ordinance to try to find a way to find paths for that. And I also feel like with some advanced planning at Village Station, we're looking at a week or 2 or 3 to get approvals at these places with partners involved. And we welcome the opportunity to participate in helping to set up events and helping to set up within the current ordinance for this season. It's a broader discussion for future seasons. And the reality is to go through the planning board now in July, then the council. It's going to be more practically beneficial for business activity to work within the current ordinances and to learn from that, and then to take up any changes that the community wants to discuss and move towards in a slower season. So that's where we've been at a staff level.
And it sounds
I'm sure
like
that's
it's-
not satisfactory for everybody. It's the ordinances that we're working within right now.
So I would just clarify that I think I copied council on my response to Thais, but where I directed her was the applicant-led zoning change, which is it's kind of the safety net that council puts in there when a property owner or resident has something that they really want to change that impacts just them but might not otherwise be ripe or fit within the current workflow. So we gave her that. We gave her Kyle's information. Given the work plan that the council has sent to staff, the planning staff, and LD 1829?
1829, maybe?
Yeah, 1829. If we wanted to move something else in community discussion ahead of that for planning staff, we'd have to talk about what we want to change, that there isn't room on that plate without some juggling.
So there's a long-term solution, which involves an ordinance change and zoning change, which you guys know well. But then it sounds like there's also a short-term opportunity. It's possible we might be able to do something this season. It might not be permanent, but and we can't turn that permanent around in a day or even a couple of days. It takes a little bit of planning, but there's a possibility for something.
What we would welcome at the staff level, and I think could be helpful if there's interest, would be to sit down with the property managers at Village Station and with Thais and map out a calendar and map out a process so that she and the property manager has clarity on what they need to submit. And there's instances and examples where folks who host these events and who bring food trucks in apply one time with a series of dates, so they can plan and they can promote and they can build around that. And it's not a perfect solution right now, but it's the ordinances that we're working with. And so we welcome that opportunity to help navigate the current ordinances as they stand.
Can I respond quickly?
Quickly, then we'll have to wrap up this conversation.
While I appreciate the process, and I really do, as does Thais, I'm sure, previously the council was able to do a test case where they gave approval for her to have the food truck constantly at your location by LL Bean, and that was the year that, it was during COVID, and it was the year that the Historical Society was moved, and it was behind Starbucks. So there was no foot traffic. It was the middle of February, and it was not a good test case. My understanding is that the council can approve a test case for July to December for her to see if this is going to work. And as a test case, since she's the only food truck in Freeport, she's the only resident food truck. So that's what I'm really requesting, is for you to make a special dispensation and make it a test case to see if it's possible and see what others complain. Because she's gotten nothing but massive support from all the businesses, the people working there who want to be able to have her food and aren't going to drive all the way down to Route 1 during their lunch hour. And there are not enough places in Freeport. We keep getting the complaint, there's not enough restaurants, there's not enough food. So that's, as a test case, you're allowed, you previously did do that, and it was not an ideal timing or anything. And I believe, my understanding is that Village Station wants to rent to her right away. So, and she would be paying for that and leasing that. And she's more than willing to put money back into the coffers of the town as well for that opportunity. But it seems to me that if we could do it as a test case, then it allows her to see and for you to see and for also the Village Station to see if this is a viable item. My understanding is that you can do that tonight, make it happen, and then long-term, make long-term plans for the town.
I think there's a very viable plan we see here with Brett's offer to sit down with the landowner and with the owner of the business you're representing.
That's just gonna put
I
it off
understand
until
that's frustrating,
September.
Amanda. I understand that, but I think we need to pursue that avenue first.
I understand that, but it's going to put it off to September. We've been through this process. You were not here. I've been through this process. I've been through this process with the planning board. I've been through hitting up against the code and trying to run my business while there were code issues that, hosting someone. So I would just really like you all to step up and put your money where your mouth is and give a special trial case for her. It's not fair what she's had to be through. We've been doing this since 2018. I'll add.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Steve.
I mean, the question at hand, it would seem to me, would be how soon could a meeting be arranged? Because it is summer now, and for some businesses, summer is the time when you can make a little hay.
I'm out next week, but I'm around tomorrow, and we made this offer a couple weeks ago as well. So we'd love to be helpful, understanding that there's challenges. It's not smooth for everybody.
Amanda, can you please let Brett speak? Thank you.
I think the differentiation here is the use of town-owned land versus private land. And what we need at the staff level, it'd be inappropriate for staff or council to approve a use on private property without that private property owner being party to the discussion. And so when we worked to get the approval last week, one of the final steps that the staff initiated was to reach out to the village station to make sure that they were comfortable with it. And so I think that there's an opportunity to get ahead of that and to work as a team with Thais and property owners, could be throughout town, and set up a sequence of events that could be very productive for her, that conforms to the existing ordinances, while the community has a conversation about the bigger policy issues. Because the reality is being in touch with businesses, there are different opinions about this. It's not as simple, and so we've got to be able to work through a process together, and we stand by the offer. I'm around tomorrow, happy to meet anytime.
I know she's listening.
And I think too, we wanted to sort of be helpful to everybody, but there are so many stakeholders and so many opinions that, we have to be very intentional with those process. So thank you, Brett. Any other thoughts or questions? All right. I look forward to hearing how that meeting goes. Thank you, Brett.
Sorry, just one thing.
Councilor Egan.
I think I already know the answer to this, but there's no different consideration because the food truck owner is also a brick and mortar restaurant. That doesn't sort of advance the standing in terms of
So the way the
a
ordinance
different location as
was,
opposed to calling it a food truck.
no, well, I mean, if she's in a brick and mortar location doing her activity, not in a food truck, then she can do it. I think one of the things that's a challenge is when, if somebody comes in with a very clear idea of what it's going to be, like exactly what they want it to be, and then are willing to work with staff to find the nuances to make it fit. I've watched Brett make just about anything fit some way.
Right.
And so I think the challenge is with little notice, with a moving target, with not as willing to kind of flex with the nuance, it makes it really hard to get done what you want to get done if it's not explicit in the ordinance, or if the ordinance clearly says no. So I think that's the
Okay.
key.
If you need any help, Brett, give me a call. I'm around tomorrow and Thursday as well.
All right, excuse me, moving on to our new business part of the agenda, which has one item this evening. It's item 85-25. So this is just to consider action relative to adopting the July 1st consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I don't think I read the be it ordered, actually.
Never mind.
Be it ordered that the July 1st, 2025 consent agenda be adopted.
Second.
Great. It's a very short consent agenda. It is to accept the resignation of Catherine Wallingford from Shellfish Conservation Commission and to approve our annual appointment of Nicholas Adam as the electrical inspector and plumbing inspector. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So now we are on to public comment, our second period.
So Jim from the radio station is on, and he's always there, and he never speaks,
All
so.
right. Hi, Jim. So with nobody on virtual, we will move along. So then we're going to discuss our tabled item from a little while back, which is item 70-25. This is to consider action regarding our policy for appointing interim seats for the sewer district and RSU 5. Kind of as a refresher, this is to create a little bit of structure and transparency around that responsibility. including a little bit of a timeline and expectations. Sophie had taken feedback around making it a little bit more flexible while still providing some of that structure we were asking for.
So the sentence that I added at the beginning was, ultimately, the town council has the sole discretion to determine whether, how, and with whom each vacancy is filled, and will utilize a process that it determines is in the overall best interest of the town. And then further in, I added some language around the process outlined below is subject to the town council's discretion, as circumstances may, in the town council's sole discretion, warrant an abbreviated process. There is, I added, nope, I guess that's all I added.
Any discussion? Councilor Egan?
I got caught by this about a year and a half ago, where we had to appoint a member to one of these boards, and we had a candidate, and the candidate was qualified, and we went ahead and took advantage of an opening on an agenda, and the person was here, and we moved rather quickly. And the administrator of one of the two was not pleased at how fast we were moving. So my only comment is, have the administrators of the two parties here had a chance to take a look at this so they know what's happening?
So the sewer district received a copy of the draft, not the most up-to-date draft. They actually were they drafted the initial process that they were looking for, and then we changed it to municipal speak. And I had a conversation with RSU 5. They very clearly think this is a town council process, and it is not for them to suggest who should be appointed or what process should be used.
Also, important to say again, it's pretty consistently for a very short time frame.
Yes.
So it's not
Yeah, I just
full
wanted
term.
to know
Yeah,
if we
I'm
had
saying
some
that more for
context.
the public versus us, that, this is until the next November election, so fairly short. So for the one that we currently have open, it will be a 2.5 months, a month appointment, so.
Thank you.
Great. Counselor Smith, can you read the be it ordered?
Be it ordered that the policy for interim appointments by the Freeport Town Council to the Freeport Sewer District and Regional School Unit Number 5, RSU 5, be adopted.
Second.
Any final, Counselor Pilch?
I just want to make sure I understand the changes, because the first time it came up, the concern that we had was, it seems to, I don't want to say force, but mandate that the appointments committee meets, does a thing, and there's a whole process. And I thought we wanted to allow for a quicker process if we thought that was the right thing to do, so the appointments committee may meet and may offer a suggestion, but ultimately the council.
I felt like we laid out a process,
Because it does
but
say.
that says here's kind of the best case scenario, but if you'd like to change the wills to mays, we can do that. It's guidelines, so
Maybe there's a new sentence too, or maybe you just missed it last time. It says the process outlined below is subject to the town council's discretion as
Yeah.
circumstances may in the
Yep.
town council's discretion. So,
Yep.
okay.
So this is sort of the standard process, but then we can deviate
We
if
can
we
have a
need
more
to.
abbreviated
That's
process.
the alternate.
Okay. I'm happy.
All right.
Thank
What's your concern in the timing? Like that the appointments committee won't meet in a timely manner?
Right, I think back to the other vacancy we had to fill recently on the school board, where they were having a strategic retreat coming up in a short amount of time after we had the opportunity to fill the vacancy. So we still advertised it for 30 days, but then when the time came down to make the appointment, there wasn't time to have an appointments committee meeting and a scheduled agenda item. It was, I think we even called a special meeting to make the appointment in time. So, But most of the time, I don't see a problem with this as outlined, so I'm okay with it.
Honestly, I see this more as direction to staff in terms of if we get a notice, we know that here are the things we need to do. Yeah, I think that's important. Speaking of RSU 5, the application period ended. We have 3 candidates, which is great. Appointments will be very busy.
All right, if no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So then we're moving on to the other business portion of our agenda. So the first item we have is the New England Passenger Rail Authority here to discuss initiatives under development. Okay, we'll give it away to Brett to introduce.
Brett Richardson, Development Director. Really pleased that we have our partners from the Northeast, NEPRA. I'm not gonna try NEPRA tonight. Patricia Quinn and Donnie Maley have been working hard on some big issues and opportunities. Freeport, we're lucky for a relatively small town to have a train station. It's a huge asset. We talk about it in the downtown vision. We talk about it in the climate action plan. We talk about it in the dog bone work group, transit-oriented development. It's a huge priority. And these guys are looking to make some moves that will increase frequency of stops in Freeport, keep people moving, and make it a real viable option. So really excited to turn it over to Patricia and Donnie and hear about their plans and how we can help.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you for making time for us tonight. As Brett said, my name is Patricia Quinn. I'm the Executive Director of the Northern New England Passenger Rail Authority, and we do refer to ourselves as NEPRA, because obviously that's a lot easier. And I'm joined here tonight by Catherine Kruglock, who's our Grant Manager, and Donnie Maley, who is our consultant helping us with planning for the future. So we're going to move on. I just want to tell you a little bit about NEPRA. NEPRA is a quasi-government agency. We were established by the Maine State Legislature back in the 1990s for the purposes of restoring passenger rail service to Maine, and we manage the operation of the Amtrak Downeaster. I report to a board of directors that's appointed by the governor of the state of Maine. That includes 5 members of the public and also the Commissioner of Transportation or his designee and the Commissioner of DECD and that designee as well. Good. In terms of what NEPRA does, we don't drive trains, but we do focus very much on our passengers because they're at the core of everything that we do. We focus also on partnerships with all of our operating partners. We're very performance-driven. We set very strong goals for ridership, revenue, customer service, and financial performance that we are held accountable to. We work hard to promote the service. We manage a number of projects, which you'll see. And we also focus very much on public benefit because the Downeaster it's a big service. It costs a lot of money to run. It's publicly funded, and everybody pays taxes, but not everybody gets to ride the train. So the relationships that we have are very important to us. And I'm going to just pause there and also say the other one, it just doesn't fit in here because it doesn't start with a P, but it's safety. NEPRA is also a safety-oriented organization. I'm going to make a PSA here just to remind you all that at every grade crossing, and I was remiss in putting this slide in, I can circulate this. At every grade crossing, including the ones here in Freeport, there's a little blue sign. It's called an ENS sign. So if you or someone you know gets stuck on a crossing, if there's a malfunction at the crossing, there's an 800 number there, and there is also an identification number that will go directly to railroad dispatch. If someone's stuck on a train track and you call 911, the police officer isn't going to know how to stop the train. The dispatcher will. So be familiar with ENS. It's there, and it can save your life. Moving on. NEPRA also, we hold agreements with several operating partners. So we have a service agreement with Amtrak. So Amtrak operates the service, provides the equipment, the crews on board, and reservation services. We also work with host railroads because the railroad are private property. So CSX owns the majority of the rail line through all of it, through the state of Maine all the way to the Massachusetts state border where the MBTA picks up. We also have a contract with a company called Nextine for food service on the Downeaster. Downeaster. The Amtrak Downeaster is the only Amtrak train in the country that has independently operated food service, and it allows us to serve local products like we just rolled out this year, Holy Donuts, and also station communities. You know, Freeport is one of our station communities, and those relationships are very important to us, and I think it's one of the reasons the Downeaster has really been so successful and is so distinctive, is because the community relationships that we have. We have agreements with Freeport and all of the stations in Maine and New Hampshire to maintain the station facilities and to provide information services. I know you don't do that anymore in Freeport, but I think you'll be back. We have those arrangements with all of the station communities, and really appreciate that because it really gives you a vested interest. The one community in Maine that we don't have an agreement with is Portland. That's a public-private relationship that NEPR has with Concord Coach Lines as tenants there. So just an overview of the Downeaster, makes 5 round trips every day between Brunswick and Boston. It travels 143 miles. The service runs using 3 Amtrak train sets, and we operate at speeds up to 79 miles an hour. There are 3 host railroads. We serve 12 stations in 3 states, and we carry more than 500,000 passengers a year. In fact, in 2024 was the Downeaster's best ridership and revenue year ever, with nearly 600,000 passengers served. So we really bounced back after the pandemic, generated over $13 million in ticket revenue. And, you know, those passengers traveled over 52 million passenger miles. So really significant. And then fiscal year 25 for us also ended yesterday. I did some back of the envelope math. We're going to come in very close in fiscal year 25 to pre-pandemic levels of about 5.5 million, 500,000 riders, about 550,000 riders. And the reason that it's going to be down from this year is that we've had all kinds of track projects. In fact, in this fiscal year, there have been 160 trains that have been disrupted, meaning that it was part train, part bus, and so disrupted service. And we've canceled 194 trains this year due to construction projects. So when you take that into consideration, it'll be our 2nd or 3rd best year ever. It means that ridership is really strong. When you look at Freeport, annual boardings here in Freeport, about 19,000 people get on and 19,000 people get off, so it's pretty well balanced there. It's a 5% increase in fiscal year 24 versus fiscal year 23. Don't have the numbers for 25 yet, but it's kind of a funky year. And about 63% of the people that board at Freeport Station travel to or from a station in Massachusetts. The travel time between Freeport and Portland is 35 minutes. Now, we all know it's a shorter drive than that. Even tonight in a traffic jam, it's a shorter drive than that. We'll get back to that in a minute. The travel time from Freeport to Boston is 3 hours and 7 minutes. So it's not completely time competitive, and there are some challenges there, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And we are focused on continuous improvement. Since 2000, NEPR has managed over $175 million in construction or capital maintenance projects on the railroad, including the project to establish service back in 2000. We ran our first train in 2001. It went from Portland to Boston. We increased our frequency from 4 to 5 daily round trips in 2007. In 2012, we expanded service to Freeport and Brunswick. We constructed a new mechanical facility in Brunswick in 2016 to even increase the frequency here. And in addition to that, we've managed a number of capital maintenance projects in cooperation with the railroad. We have some big projects ongoing right now. In fact, underway currently, $65 million in repair and maintenance projects that we are overseeing and managing. The first one is a tie replacement project. CSX is replacing 124,000 grade ties from the Massachusetts state line all the way to Brunswick. This project began on April 1st. CSX is running this project. They work 8 days on, 6 days off. Today is the last day of cycle number 7. that we've been going through since April, which is why we've canceled 194 trains. They've traveled about 85 miles. They've installed about 80,000 ties. They cleared out of Portland Station over the weekend. They're marching through Portland now, and so you're going to be seeing them pretty soon. It's a pretty cool operation. The tie gang has 32 pieces of equipment that all runs in a progression, and each piece of equipment does something, and there are between 60 and 80 people that will be going along with there. I know there's some planned grade crossing outages here because as CSX is replacing the ties as part of our project, they're also repairing grade crossings and really making tremendous investments in the communities to improve the reliability and the efficiency and safety of the service. In addition to that, we have another $31 million project ongoing in Wells, which started a few years ago, that has two components to it. The first is extending a siding. So in front of the Wells station, there was a double track, but it was only 2 miles long. So that was extended by an additional 6 miles. CSX completed that last December. And the most exciting part of this is the station expansion project. We only have, even though there are 2 tracks in front of the station, there was only a platform on one side. So we're building a platform on the other side with elevator towers and a connecting passenger bridge. That's going to allow trains in opposing directions to stop and receive and alight passengers at the same time, which will give us a tremendous amount of more schedule flexibility. It'll improve reliability. And through that, we've been able to negotiate another slot with the railroad, which means we're going to be running a 6th round trip. So there'll be another train that'll leave Brunswick in the morning, early in the morning, probably around 6-ish. It's going to go down to Wells, and it's going to come into the greater Portland area and Freeport and Brunswick, timed with people going to work between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning. That's significant because right now the first Downeaster train northbound doesn't get into Portland until 11:30 and doesn't get here until afternoon. So there's going to be people that are going to live in southern Maine can get on a train and they can come to Freeport to go to work, or people in Freeport can get on and they can go to Portland to work. So we're really thinking that this is going to diversify our marketplace quite a bit. We also have a number of projects in the planning phase. So we have a grant through the Federal Railroad Administration. We're involved in the National Corridor ID program, and we're doing a service development plan that kind of looks ahead 10, 15 years and looks at improvements we want to make to add additional frequencies or reduce travel time. We're also working with the town of Falmouth and private developers there at West Falmouth Crossing, located right off of exit 53, to add a new Downeaster station that will serve people that live north and west of Portland. About 6% of the people who board at Portland Station live up along the I-95 corridor and have to drive all the way into Portland. This will save them 12 miles of travel time, saving VMTs and making it more convenient. So we're also working with Maine Turnpike on that and building a park and ride. But the private developer is looking at mixed use, residential, in conjunction with the train station. So that's quite exciting. And then lastly, but certainly not least, our number one strategic initiative is to relocate Portland Station to reduce travel time, reduce our costs, and really promote regional mobility. And as I mentioned earlier about those travel times between Freeport and Portland, or Freeport and Boston, a big chunk of that time is spent people backing up and getting into the station. How many of you have been on the train and backed in and out of Portland Station and know what I'm talking about? Okay, yeah. Where am I going? What? Which way? What? Why are we backing up? Yeah, so it happens all the time. And, remembering that when the service started in 2001, it originated out of Portland, and it wasn't until 2012 that it came to Freeport and Brunswick. So it's taken us a few years to get around it, but we know that it's a problem. So the backup move into Portland is because the station is located on a branch line. So you think of the Portland station as kind of a mile down a dead-end road. That's where the train has to go, and then come out and then get back on the main road to go up to Freeport and Brunswick. That adds 10 minutes of travel time if you're traveling between Brunswick and Freeport and Portland, and it adds 15 minutes if you're traveling between Freeport and Brunswick and a station location south of Portland. And that really impedes our ridership because it's a lot easier to get in your car. And in fact, the zip code that has the 5th most boardings in Portland is Brunswick. And that's because people can drive there faster than they can take the train, and that's something that we want to stop. We want to really fix that. And on all that, time is money. Labor is not inexpensive. Railroad labor is really not inexpensive, and so we're trying to reduce our costs too. It also recreates railroad bottlenecks, because while these trains are out there dancing around, they tie up the main line. So passenger trains are stuck, freight trains are stuck. Again, that is a problem, costs everybody money. And it also limits our ability to change our schedule, because we have these slots, because you have to time everything so perfectly. Somebody's out 2 minutes, and then we're doing this dance there, and it makes trains not on time. And it prohibits the ability for us to add additional frequencies, because CSX won't allow it, because there's just not enough room out there for the trains to get around each other. And also where the station is located right now, I mean, Thompson's Point has developed very nicely, but there aren't major demand drivers there. There aren't major employment centers there. In fact, there are only about 3,000 jobs within walking distance there, so that's a problem. So if you take all those things and you add them up and you think of what were the impacts, based on fiscal year or calendar year 2023 ridership, 125,000 people went either north or south between Portland and Freeport and Brunswick and beyond. So they've made that backup trip. 125,000 people were on trains that backed up. Collectively, that means they spent 31,000 hours backing up. That maneuver also created 3,600 hours of crew overtime that we had to pay. And while trains were doing that, they burned 8,600 gallons of fuel. And when you take the crew time, the passenger time, the fuel time, it's almost $1 million a year it costs us to do that in just a year. So we need to fix this, and we know that. We've been talking about this for a long time. And then back in 2019, the Maine Department of Transportation initiated a study to look at the partnership between the Downeaster and Concord coach lines, because obviously where we are out there, we're with Concord coach, and some people take the bus and some people take the train. An extensive study that they looked at to say, what should we do here, and is it worth separating the two? And while people do it, it's really just a small fraction of our ridership and of Concord's ridership, and really the impact to the 125,000 people who spent 31,000 hours backing up really outweighed that. So Maine DOT started that study to look at the options. They had a technical review, stakeholder engagement. And then in 2019, NEPR went out and we did a road show. We did kind of workshops, public workshops in Brunswick and in Portland and in Wells. And we had people tell us what they thought. We talked to them about the options of different things and got some good feedback. Overwhelmingly, the public told us they wanted to see more trains, shorter travel time, and more locations. In 2020, Maine DOT issued their final report, and they recommended that NEPR look for an alternate location for the station, move off of Thompson's Point, because it was really just impeding the growth of the service and impeding any expansion of service. So in 2021, NEPR, in partnership with Maine DOT, began a site location analysis. So as part of that, we established some project goals, and those were to reduce travel time so we could increase ridership and revenue. We wanted to improve reliability, meaning that trains were on time more often. We wanted to improve connectivity and walkability, be in a place that people wanted to go, improve access to jobs, also maintain access to the layover facility, because an important piece of where the Portland station is, there's a mechanical facility there. So it's still important that trains have access to get in and out, just not with people on them. We want to reduce railroad conflicts and support station community goals, because again, you folks are working on transit-oriented development to have people live here so they can work in employment centers in Portland, and we want to be able to get you there. And then allow for future service expansions, whether those be north and south or east and west of Portland. So what this process entailed is we looked at 3 sites that you can see here. So site number 1 is north of Congress Street. It's if you're on St. John Street, and if you kind of think of where Amato's and McDonald's is, it's right in that vicinity behind there. There's a parking lot. We looked at that. That was taken off the table pretty quickly because there just isn't a lot of room. We also looked at Site 2, which Site 2 is located near the county jail and the Maine Medical Center parking garage, and also where Maine Hardware is. Now, we all know that that's where the train station was 50 years ago, but it looked a little bit different 50 years ago. And then we looked at a site a little bit south of that, which is kind of adjacent to Mercy Hospital, between Mercy Hospital and St. John Street. So we did a technical analysis of these 3 sites. which looked at train operations, access and connectivity, and also zoning and land use. We held 2 specific virtual public meetings specifically on this topic, and then many other meetings like this. Did a tremendous amount of stakeholder outreach to the railroads, Amtrak and CSX, station communities, the property owners that were involved, the transit providers, and the whole initiative got quite a bit of media coverage. The summary of the results, as I said, is that we took Site 1 off the table and really focused on Site 2 and 3 for further evaluation. So I'm going to show you a picture of Site 2. So if you want to imagine, you're hovering over main hardware, and you're looking at the main health parking garage there. To your right is the jail. To your left is the old main central building. There's a parking area there. That parking area is fully subscribed, so we need to, there was no parking, there's no facility there to support service right now. And also you can see where the station is drawn in there. So again, there's double track, so it's envisioned to be a double track station with a platform on each side, so trains can meet in opposing direction, which eliminates bottlenecks. There's also the Congress Street grade crossing down here in the lower right-hand corner, so it needs to be far enough away from there so that the train doesn't follow the crossing while it's in the station. So that's what we looked at, so that's that location. And we'll just go to the next slide, Donnie, and we can see, so the property, all of that property now is owned by Maine Health, which is new. They bought it in 2022. Maine Health really expresses severe concerns about how a train station and traffic around that would intermingle with their parking garage. They have 600 shuttle vans go in and out of that parking garage every day. So it's considerable traffic, so how to make that work with a train station is very concerning to them. They're also concerned about the grade crossing impacts being that close. Following the crossing, ambulances use that route. And also conflicts with their plans. They bought that property because they want to expand medical facilities in the state of Maine, and a train station is just not consistent with that. It also limits access because even though the station is located right there, you can't get to the Mercy campus, even though it's right there because of the railroad infrastructure. So you're kind of just stuck on the St. John Street side. There's no connectivity to the Fall River Parkway. It would require a shuttle to get to the Portland Transportation Center, and as part of that Maine DOT study that we did, or that they did, one of the things when they said you could look to relocate the station was to make sure we had good access to the PTC and Concord coach lines. And so this, because the railroad bifurcates that, you have to go all the way around with the shuttle, so there's no walkable access to that. It is within close proximity to Congress Street, which complicates things from a railroad perspective, adds a lot of money. You know, CSX and Amtrak are investing $50 million installing positive train control, which is state-of-the-art automatic warning systems. And, you know, we could come up with a system and jury rig around it, but there's risks associated with that. And so CSX is reluctant. And it's adjacent to the county jail. So there's that. And it still requires the backup move because it's located north of where the branch is to go to the Mountain Division. So it would be tough to get in and out of the Mountain Division. So we move on to about 1,200 feet south of Site 2 to what we call Site 3. And this is the site that's between Mercy Hospital and St. John. There's opportunities on St. John to develop parking there and opportunities to provide access down to the station. There would be direct connectivity, so people would get off the train. They could go in one direction. They could get on the Mercy campus and go to an appointment or to work. They could, on the other side, they could get to the Maine Med Shuttle and get to Maine Medical Center. So it really adds some new connectivity there. It's also south of where the Mountain Division branches off. So if we had equipment that we needed to break off and haul into the layover facility, we could do that. It also supports, if there was ever, I mean, a few years ago, the folks at Rock Row asked us to do a study to look at the potential to connect, to have an east-west connection. And even though that's not something that's on the planning books right now, if we were north of that location, it would take that off the table completely. There would never be an east-west connection. So being south really provides some really options for the future. Okay, Don, you can go ahead. So again, Site 3 had direct access to the Mercy campus and Maine Medical Center and shuttle, robust vehicular and bike ped access. That pedestrian bridge would actually kind of permeate the railroad and create a connection that doesn't currently exist between St. John Street and the Fall River Parkway. Really, there are some potential there for partnerships with Mercy. Mercy is at the table and working with us to look at a phased plan to work to expand access and facilities there. Also, this location, for the railroad reasons I told you, is preferred by Amtrak and CSX because it eliminates conflicts, provides the best access to the Portland layover facility, and supports future growth. There's no impact to the Congress Street grade crossing. And it also has some connectivity there to the Portland Transportation Center and Concord coach lines, because if somebody went down on the train, came back on the bus could get off, go over the Fall River Bridge, come on the Parkway, drop people there at the corner, and then go on to the station, just like they do in Boston, where they go to different terminals at Logan. They could just be different terminals, and that bus could make a seamless transition there. So it has improved access to the PTC as well. So we looked at those locations, as we said, went through a very public process. We had 2 public meetings. First public meeting that we had, this was after a couple of years of review, took what we learned and what we knew. We presented it to the public. Over 100 people attended our public meeting. It was virtual in April. We described the project needs and the goals. There was overwhelmingly support of the project. I mean, everybody said, you got to do this. You can't keep backing this train up. And most people actually preferred Site 3. In June, we got the rest of the stakeholder feedback from the railroads, and our board endorsed and said Site 3 looks like the one we should move ahead with. We had another virtual meeting in August, took all that information to the public, said this is what we want to do. The public was supported, and then we drafted, our VHB, our consultant, drafted a final report. That's actually published on our website. It's about 25 pages. Also on there, there's recordings of the public meetings and the presentations that were shown if anybody wants to see. So that was the process that we went through. So the final recommendation was to move forward with Site 3. I mean, the benefits of that is that it will increase ridership and revenue. We know in the past, back in 2007, when we reduced travel time by 15 minutes, our ridership grew by 36%. So we know that. And it also supports that inbound commute, because if we're going to run an inbound commuter service, people are going to come from Wells into Portland. They don't want to go to Thompson's Point. They want to go to Portland. And so I don't even know if we would do that, if it would be worthwhile. I mean, it's tens of thousands of riders different in the 2 locations. Improves access to employment. The site has access to 9,500 jobs. Remember I said earlier the current site has access to 3,000 jobs. So 9,500 jobs within walking distance, including the Mercy Hospital and the main med shuttle. Improves connectivity for vehicles and pedestrians and bikes because there's that permeability. Opportunity to connect to the PTC, and all of these things reduces train congestion, improves reliability, and really supports expanded service. And I'll just ask you to pause there for a minute, because as I was scrambling to get this together, I eliminated a slide, and I want to get to next steps. So we had, after the report came out, we moved on to preliminary engineering and some NEPA work. That we have funded, and we're looking to fund get a grant application for discretionary funds to fund the project. Our preliminary engineering suggests that the new station, with all of the railroad improvements and the towers and that, would cost about $50 million. And so again, we're looking to the Federal Railroad Administration in partnership with Maine DOT to get federal funding to pay for that. In order to apply for that, you have to do a benefit cost analysis, which you have to look and see if the investments that you're making will, or the money that you're requesting, you'll recover that over a 20-year period. So a 1 in a benefit cost analysis, and this is a federal requirement, and it's a federally prescribed process, has to be at least a 1, meaning that you recoup your costs in 20 years. This project came in at a 1.7, significant. The City of Portland, frankly, prefers Site 2. They've been consistent in their interest in pursuing Site 2. We looked at it for several years. There just doesn't seem to be a path forward, so we're a little bit stuck right now, frankly, but we're going to continue to work with the stakeholders and to try to provide information, more information, get feedback, and of course, want to work with the community to design a station that's going to meet their needs, but it's got to be in a place that it can work. So we're going to continue to move forward, continue to press forward. We want to be able to make this, improve regional mobility. This is important to Freeport and your goals. We want to be able to, your development, people to be able to get into Portland and get to work and back. So we hope that we can count on you for support of the project overall, that it's important to move the station and endorse the work that we've done to move forward with Site 3. These discretionary opportunities come up periodically, and we'd like to be in a position to apply when the next one arises. Like I said, Maine DOT has pledged a match to it, so we're ready to move forward and bring this home too. And with that, thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
This is great. Thank you. Lots of hard work has gone into this very clearly. And you're certainly spot on. It aligns with a lot of the goals we're talking about here in Freeport. What would be, I hear what's happening with Portland, and what would be your next steps in terms of engaging with those stakeholders and looking to find some sort of agreement or compromise?
We've had a number of meetings. They've recently requested that we do more analysis and actually present a no-build analysis, which is a little bit concerning given what we went through with Maine DOT back in 2019 through 21, that clearly demonstrated that it was okay to move. But the work has been done. I mean, I think we can provide that information. I think we're going to package it up a little bit differently and present it again.
Great. Councilor Brown.
I can remember years ago when this was just an idea, and a name that I think I've heard for a good number of years is your name.
Yeah.
So
I've been around for a
a
bit.
lot of people thank you for your efforts. I have a question about bicycles, the current,
Buses?
what,
I think it was bicycles, you said?
bicycles.
Oh, bicycles.
Yeah, I've ridden the bicycle, I've taken it to Boston, I've even ridden to my parents' house in Connecticut via the train, including across town Boston. I've learned over the years that, well, it seems like bicycles were diminishing in their ability to be carried on a train, and it seems to boil down to platform length. So I'm just curious if there's any interest in promoting that particular mode of transportation in conjunction with the trains.
And you're right, that was the case at a period in time. Things have changed. So that was when the bikes that we carried on board had to be in the cab car, which is the lead car that has the Downeaster logo. And so we'd have to move the train to get the bikes in there. Amtrak has since, a few years ago, installed one bike rack in each coach. So now we can roll on. And so it's a lot easier. And then there's new equipment that's coming that we're scheduled to get in 2030. And don't quote me on this, but I think each coach will be able to accept 2 or 3 bikes. So that will double or triple the number of bikes. So we hear you, and people ride bikes on the Downeaster all year long. Like we do this daily report, and we have a staff meeting on Mondays, and we look and say, wow, it was like 12 degrees, and 4 people brought a bike on board this weekend. It's astonishing. So you're an appreciated and loyal following.
Go team.
What's the city's objection to Site 2? Or what's their objection to Site 3 in favor of Site 2?
What they've expressed to us is that they don't think we've given enough consideration to transit-oriented development. And A, we have. B, a station at Site 3 does not preclude transit-oriented development at Site 2. The sites are close enough to each other, 1,200 feet apart, that one doesn't preclude the other, but the owner of the property has other ideas about what they want to do with their property, and so I'm not quite sure how I'm going to fix that.
Do you know if there's been a conversation between the city and the landowner at all?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Thanks.
More than once.
I want to echo Councilor Brown's thanks for everything that you and NEPRA do to not only have done to bring passenger rail to Maine, period, to Freeport specifically, but all the work you're doing to continue to expand it in terms of its breadth and frequency. As someone who has often commuted either from Freeport to Boston or from Boston to Freeport. I am exceedingly familiar with the rubric of analysis of how to get from each place about timing, time of day, schedule, cost, all of those things. So I am particularly interested in how you've described reducing travel time as well as frequency, because I understand the challenges of those as a rider is trying to make a decision about what their mode of transportation is going to be. So knowing that the station move potentially reduces travel time by 15 minutes, but we're also looking at expanding number of stops. If we're looking at adding a West Falmouth stop, for example, or another one somewhere else, what does that do in terms of increasing the travel time?
Great question. So the only additional stop that we're looking at is West Falmouth. And a station stop will generally adds about 5 minutes into the schedule. Trains stop at the station usually for 2 minutes. That's what they're scheduled for, but they have to decelerate and then they have to accelerate. So it's within that. It's certainly less than 15 minutes. Right now, the station stop in Portland is 5 minutes because they have to reverse where the control comes in the train. So it's 10 minutes in and then the 5 minutes, or 5 minutes in, 5 minutes there, 5 minutes out, which is the 15 minutes. So, but you're right, the Falmouth station, if we took that out, would add a couple more minutes in there as well. But you'll be going in the same direction.
Yes. I know the other concern in terms of travel time and why the train takes longer than driving in many cases is speed restrictions on the rails themselves. And is there anything in the future that might accelerate the train?
Excellent question. Well, first of all, I can tell you that based on all these investments that we've made and are making, with the exception of give them another 24 hours when they lift the restriction from this last tie gang, there are no speed restrictions on the line at all. The CSX has come in and done a phenomenal job. Also, I mentioned that they're installing positive train control. So before positive train control or without positive train control, passenger trains on this railroad are limited to running at 79 miles an hour. Positive train control will relax that restriction, and so that's what we're trying to do is work with CSX. I'm not sure if that's going to be actually increasing speed or reducing the slope. You know, again, it's like you're on a country road, so sometimes you go in 60 and sometimes you go in 70 and sometimes you go in 79. But to definitely reduce travel time is how we put it, is a priority. And the great news is CSX is also interested in increasing the travel time or reducing the travel time for their freight trains. You know, back in the day on this line here, before we started running passenger trains, freight trains ran between 10 and 25 miles an hour. With the upgrades that were there due to the passenger trains, those were upgraded to up to 40 miles an hour, and CSX has their eye on 60, which is great because that also, time is capacity too, because the faster they get out of the way, the faster we get out of the way, the more room there is for everybody to move around.
My last question is specifically about the CSX upgrades. We've talked about it briefly, and I know Sophie and Earl have talked about this, but we've had residents express concerns around the just knowledge of the timing of when those grade crossings will be inaccessible, essentially. We have 2 neighborhoods in Freeport where there is only one entrance exit, and it includes that grade crossing. So what is the outreach for CSX in terms of communicating with residents when that timing is going to be and how long those grade crossings will be inaccessible?
My experience as they've marched up the railroad here is that they've worked through the public works departments and also the public safety departments at the municipalities to let them know. And again, it's kind of a moving target, so we'd all love for them to be able to tell us exactly where they were going to be on what day, but that's just not the case. I know that, for instance, this past weekend, they closed Congress Street in Portland. It was closed for 3 days. It opened this morning. So there was outreach. The city of Portland sent out notifications. I actually went for a drive on Saturday just to check it out and see what it was. And man, it was walled off. And I gotta say, this is a well-oiled machine with these people. This is what these gangs do. They travel all around the country, and this is their job. And as disruptive as this whole project has been, it's a well-oiled machine. They're professional. They're considerate. They have people who are aware and knowledgeable of safety concerns. I know there were, for instance, there was a grade crossing in Scarborough, Winnick's Neck, that was a one-way, and they didn't do it. So, I mean, I think as long as they stay in good communication with your public safety office and your public works department, they'll provide information. You know, I can tell you it'll probably be sometime between July 8th and July 14th, I think is 8 days after that. I think it'll probably be in the next cycle that it'll hit, and they'll know a day or two ahead of time, and they'll target it. And, you know, it'll be a disruption, but they're doing a good job. If you don't hear from them, or if you want, I'm happy to provide you with the contact, but there are a couple folks that's their job, is to coordinate with the communities.
So I'll bring up a controversial topic that was controversial for us here in Freeport when we implemented quiet zones. So there's a lot of debate in town, considerable expense, but we have them now. And with the increase in service, it's likely that we may pass the thresholds that would require us to make investments in the crossings in order to maintain the quiet zones, as I understand it. So if we had a 6th train, we might need to do quad gates instead of the dual gates.
Yeah, I don't think that the 6th train is going to trigger that. We've talked to CSX and talked to them about that, and I think you're still pretty much under the threshold. You know, I don't know what the future holds beyond that, and regulations change all the time, but I wouldn't worry about it with the 6th round trip.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you.
I just thank you very much. It is such a pleasure to work with Patricia and her team. Brian is her ops person, and he and Earl work together quite consistently, and he's a pleasure to work with, and I feel like we are learning more and more about the train as staff and how we can take advantage of it, and in only positive ways. But thank you.
We appreciate your partnership. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your hard work on this. And I think, you know, we're obviously a station community. We're invested in the work you're doing. And if we can be helpful as stakeholders in the conversation, let us know.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Happy 4th. I'll be
Happy
here for the
4th.
parade. I don't live here, but I'll be here for the parade.
All right. So now moving on to our second item under other business. This is discussion related to the removal of our silver bullet recycling bins. As the manager has mentioned, certainly a lot of folks reaching out about this one. And so I think sort of the conversation tonight will be Sophie has some information to share to kind of coalesce the data we've been seeing. We have Rod Regier here as well, our EcoMaine rep as of, well, until very recently, and then, yes, until recently. And then we also have Mandy McPherson here from Freeport Sustainability Advisory Board for the conversation. So I'll let you take it away, Sophie.
So I want to just kind of set the stage, and that is first by saying we've pulled the signs back out. They don't exist anymore. Well, somewhere they do on a pile, and it is very clear that our desire to get things going, we skipped the step of education and outreach. So that is 100% on my plate, and I'm hoping that we can at least begin the conversation here tonight. So there we go. So I just want to run through kind of the information that was presented to Town Council, and I've put a fine point on some of it. A lot of this data is coming from Rod Regier.
Is this available somewhere? So this is the first time council is also seeing this. This is the first time Sophie is presenting. So this material will be available after the meeting as well.
So Rod Rogier takes all of the data that EcoMaine collects and crunches the numbers for us. I also looked at the last calendar year data from our hauling information, and it aligns so closely with what Rod has that we're using.
Can I correct myself for a second?
Yeah.
I do want to iterate that Rod has made this information available
Yeah, it's
for a very long time. So
Yeah.
this has been in council materials. Rod has presented it as well. I understand this will be available after, but I want to make it clear that council has had this information. So
There was no implication that anything other than mileage.
yeah.
Yep. So if you look, you can see that overall recycling has stayed quite consistent over the last 4 years. 2020 was the pandemic, and we have not we left that year alone. 2019, before that, we had 2 other silver bullets, so we're really looking from 2021 on. If you look at this at the very bottom, the dark is the recycling that is collected by Pine Tree or Casella, as they're also go by. They've stayed pretty steady. In 2021, they were at 199 tons. 2024, they're at 171 tons of collected recycling material. Hunter Road is a silver bullet, and that is a high of 139 tons in 2021 and a low of 118 tons in 2024. The green is West Street Silver Bullet. It's 196 tons, pretty consistently dropped down in 2024 to 179 ton. And the top is what we collect at the transfer facility. A high in 2021 of 289 tons, and last year we were at 264 tons. So pretty stable throughout. The tonnage, the issue that Rod brought to our attention, whoops, I'm going wrong computer. So this is the same information. I averaged them out because you'll see I use some averages, but the Hunter Road Fields, Hunter Road and West Street account together for approximately 41% of the waste. They account for 81% of the trips that we have to haul for, which brought up the whole issue of there's volume. There's so much volume at those sites that we fill up, and we take a lot of trips. The idea, I think, that came up during the budget workshop was this idea of we're hauling air to EcoMaine. So let's talk a little bit about what that transportation looks like. We use a company called Reynolds and Sons, and they're out of Portland. They are bringing up a silver bullet, empty silver bullet that weighs between 5,500 and 6,100 pounds empty. We use 30-yard roll-off containers, 30 cubic yard roll-off containers. They're making a trek that is on average about 20 miles one way. They drop it, they latch on to the full one, and they take the trek another 20 miles to EcoMaine, and they dump it. We're using silver bullets that have cutouts, so you're putting your waste through holes, they're covered. And if you look, you can really see that the transfer station where we have a 40 cubic yard compacting, a 50 cubic yard compacting roll-off, it makes a big difference in the number of tons, so a number of trips. So we're moving 268 or 264 ton of material out of the landfill the recycling center at a fraction of the trips, which again came to this idea of we're hauling air. And the question that came up for council was, when you look at 30 cubic yard roll-offs for 2024, a 3/4 of a ton on average per load, and West Street at 70.7 tons on average. And then you look at more along the lines of 2.6 tons, you're seeing that there's a lot more efficiency. So that really came, when we looked at this, there were two questions council and Rod and staff talked about. One is the budgetary impact of hauling. So we spent last year about $86,700 on transportation. $70,000 of that was associated with the silver bullets, and about $16,600 was associated with the transfer station. Rod, I think the part that was most telling was the math on the per ton cost to transport, with the silver bullets being so much higher. The real discussion that council had, though, wasn't really about the dollars and cents of the budget. It was, if our effort here, recycling is good for the environment and we want to recycle, so are we doing the service to the environment by having these silver bullets? So I just want to give fair warning on this next slide. I'm not a scientist. I used resources available online. I looked at the trips. I put the dollars in because it's always interesting. But considering that the heavy-duty truck carrying a roll-off, 40 miles round trip, you're looking at the emissions at about 9.9 million, 17 million, and 6.4 million. So 33 million grams of CO2. So those 500 trips are certainly not helpful to the environment. When we looked at removing the silver bullets, so I assumed for this calculation, looking at the fact that last time we moved the removed silver bullets, we lost 6%. We saw a 6% transition from recycling to solid waste. Not saying it's all the same, but mathematically, 6%. I used for my calculation that we moved 10% to MSW. That private haulers went from picking up 25% to 23% to 25%, and that we were collecting 65% of that. So when we look at all of that, it looks like we are able to avoid about 302 round trip from the transfer station, which is about a $51,000 savings. So that's saying we're going to have to take more trips on the recycling and solid waste side, but we're saving on the silver bullet side. And when I do the math of 1,600 grams of CO2 emission per heavy-duty truck hauling a roll-off container, we come up with that CO2 savings. So then, because one of the questions I got was, will all the more trips to the transfer station? So when we calculate that those 302 avoided trips is equivalent to about 12,000 miles, the equivalent CO2 at 400 grams per mile is about 49,000 grams. And that gives us, at 400 grams per mile, approximately 17,000 car trips could be taken from an average of either Hunter Road Fields. So assuming everybody goes to Hunter Road Fields or West Street, it's 2.85 miles is the average, and I divided that out. So that is where we got to on an annual basis, the CO2. So there really is a net savings unless you think we're going to add 17,000 car trips back out to the, so. That, one of the things that has come up is an idea about, so I spoke with FSAB. Tom's going to have to help me get out of this. Thank you, Tom. Spoke with FSAB last week, and they came up with the idea of hauling from the current Silver Bullet locations to the landfill, moving the material into the compactor, compacting it, and hauling it from there. The concern that was raised from that, along with you're still having quite a haul to get from Portland to drop, to make that, is that the way these roll-offs are unloaded, it's really set up to be tipped on a floor. So then we don't have a floor, so we'd be tipping in the weather. I think Earl has some concerns about what would happen as part of that. So I think that would be something you'd want to really look at more closely if that was an idea you wanted to go through. But I don't see when you run initial calculations, it looks like it's almost worse for the environment than otherwise, and it likely you're then also going to increase costs because you'll have the added trips from the transfer station and still have the round trip to move the bullet from West Street. So that's what I have for information.
I would love to give our guests an opportunity to speak as well. So Mandy, if you would like to say a few words, go ahead.
Mandy McPherson, co-chair of the Freeport Sustainability Advisory Board. I just want to note that suggestion was just something thrown out in discussion. It's not a recommendation from FSAB, and it isn't something, it was an off the cuff at the moment at the meeting because this hadn't come before us before, so we didn't know. So we were just looking back and remembering what we did before. So just historically, I took a peek in our file, and we were involved in the 2019 discussions when you dropped down to 2 silver bullets, which is completely different than going from 2 to none. So that's a big change. And then we were tasked with looking at the broader waste management system, which I think is something really important for us to do, and it's something that's in our climate action plan. It's also, waste management got added to the state's climate action plan. So that's a very important thing because there may be other needs and opportunities, and removing the 2 silver bullets might be the right decision. Removing one of them might be the right decision, but there could be things that work in harmony that we don't even know yet. Another thing that's happened since we were looking at this, because we had to put that on hold because 2022 and into 24, we had to do the climate action plan. So we had a lot. We had a PowerPoint. I just looked in the file, getting ready to go to bring in front of you. So the numbers are all changed now. But another thing that's happened is that Maine was first in the country, first state to pass an extended producer responsibility law. And so that's something that's been rolling out. And with bringing monies to municipalities for recycling, it puts the cost onto the producers. So we don't know where we are with that yet, and that's something that we should look at as well, because there may be some money for us if it's just a fiscal discussion. And then the concern is the increase in waste. And the trips, I'm kind of confused about the number of trips and everything. So if there's 3,000 people and they have to make more trips, that could add up quickly. So I'm kind of confused with the calculation on the trips and the number of people. If they did 3 more trips a year, that's 9,000. I don't know how that plays out. So, and in our climate action plan, we are trying to reduce the in-town driving around and around and around because it's a lot of stop and start. So it's actually a higher level of emission. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. We don't want to, the comprehensive look at the system, the idea of like bringing down waste overall, because if we're just transferring recycling into waste, that's a problem because we'll be paying there instead. The other thing is contamination. I know that was a big topic in what we were looking at in 2021 and 22. Pine tree haulers were the most contaminated, and that was like almost double of the other stuff, the transfer station being the least, which was great. So I think there's a lot of things to look at, and I'm definitely conscious of the cost and the sustainability implications with the hauling. So we would love the chance to look at all of that and then bring it all back to you. So, but it's your decision, whatever you think. Do you have any questions for me?
And then, Rod, is there anything else you'd like to add as well? Yeah.
As Rod walks over, I will just say in all of the research that I was doing to try to put this together, when it talked about best practices for municipal recycling programs, the first was to have a supervised site, and the second was pay as you throw, which, as you are aware, our charter does not allow. So just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you. Today is my first day in 20 years of not being Freeport's representative in EcoMaine, and Sophie Wilson is now. So this is a great
Was
day.
it July 1st, the switch?
Pardon me? Yeah.
Yep. Wow.
June
What a way to
30th
celebrate.
was the switchover.
But all that knowledge didn't go away last night.
And apropos of nothing to do with waste, but the earlier speaker, I've actually had customers come to Freeport to visit me on Amtrak, and they simply walk from the platform to my place. We're talking about tipping fees. I just want, again, with the television on, I want to remind everybody that tipping fee is the kind of the standard term for the cost for waste disposal. EcoMaine in Portland is the destination. There's a scale there. Everything disposed there is by weight, and the tipping fee is what EcoMaine charges to process the waste. You take it down there, weigh it, drop it off. It may be the bin for municipal solid waste, just trash. There's a weight per ton or cost per ton you do that. There's a separate bin for recycling, and there are different costs for that also. But tipping fee is the starting point for the language for the discussion or discussing this. And if I may, I'm going to step back for a second and just remind everybody of why we're here and why it's so different right now than some of the earlier discussions about recycling. When I helped start the recycling program long ago, Freeport had just transitioned from an open pit burning operation to a landfill. And we'd been operating the landfill for several years. It was clear that that was not going to be a long-term sustainable practice. There was pressure from all different directions that led ultimately to regional solutions, including ultimately the creation, the design, the construction of EcoMaine. We had a landfill that was filling, and you look at the fill rate, and you looked at when EcoMaine was going to be built, and there was a gap. We needed to cover about an extra year, otherwise the landfill would have to have been expanded. Recycling was started, among other reasons, to help bridge that gap, and the recycling program then was one of the reasons that Freeport was able to avoid, I think at the time, a $300,000 and $350,000 bond issue. Recycling saved Freeport a lot of money at that time. When EcoMaine started its single stream recycling program 20 years ago, there was a different financial structure and tipping fees at EcoMaine. At that time, waste, MSW, municipal solid waste, trash, was being charged, or the tipping fee was $165 a ton. Recyclables sent to EcoMaine had 0. For the differential between $165 a ton for waste and 0 for recycling, there's a huge incentive to recycle. And while there is that differential at EcoMaine, again, Freeport saved a lot of money by its recycling program. Over the last half dozen years, because of different matters at EcoMaine, there is no longer free recycling, and the recycling tipping fee has been increasing through the years. Right now, the fiscal year beginning today, the tipping fee for recyclables at EcoMaine is $85. The tipping fee for MSW is $107. There's about a $20 difference. And next year, it'll probably be parity. So at that point, there's a huge difference in what the incentive is to recycle. But then the problem is that for commercial waste in town, transportation plus tipping fee is paid for by the business. For residents, I pay the transportation cost. Anybody dealing with Wentworth or Dan's successor, Cody Jones, or with Pine Tree, or whether you go to the transfer station, the generator pays the transportation cost, but on your budget is the tipping fee for the MSW. The thing is that for recycling on the municipal budget is transportation plus the tipping fee. And with what we're dealing with right now, we're adding to the tipping fee for recyclables $225 a ton, effectively, for the tipping fee cost for the transportation for the silver bullet versus about $65 a ton for the compacted waste. This is the differential that has began this discussion. That's where we are right now. On a larger scale, I mean, whatever we can do to reduce waste is good. I think that dealing with enhancing the composting program that we've started is really easy, low-hanging fruit. But in the meantime, we have to deal with the realities of the waste collection and transportation costs down to EcoMaine. And this is the discussions that I've been part of, and that you all and town staff have been. The last time silver bullets, I remember how bitter was the dispute. 5 years ago, when there were a lot of emails. And one of the concerns was that the recycling program is going to be damaged. I checked today, and the final fiscal year, we had 4 silver bullets, but the two that were eliminated at Doherty's and the one in South Freeport, the year that they were discontinued, or the fiscal year, there'd been, I think it was 215 tons sent to EcoMaine from them. A couple years later, you look at the recycling Freeport, and of the 215 tons lost, 205 tons were redistributed to the remaining silver bullets, and particularly to the transfer station. The loss of those silver bullets lost from recycling 10 tons. Basically, it lost nothing. And I think that that's both a lesson, but it's also a warning for you folks and for the staff in Public Works, because, again, with the information that that we were looking at earlier, if in fact all the recyclables currently going to West Street and Hunter Road went over to the transfer station, you're going to be doubling, slightly more than doubling the amount of traffic through there, or not, if not traffic, certainly doubling the amount of recyclables having to be processed there. And that's something that it does take not only education for the residents who know how to do it, but I think there's a lot of serious engineering consideration as how to be able to do that so that, in fact, it works over there. But that's, that's sort of a brief summary of why we're here, and then also, again, just kind of a different way of saying maybe the same things that Sophie was saying earlier with regard to the budget consequences that we're facing. So, questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
I have a question, Rod. So I think what you're saying is times have changed.
Yes.
Right? And
Times change.
And times do change, right?
Yes,
and so we're
right.
being really required, we need to look at this in a new way. And it turns out we're being asked to come up with some directions. But the truth is, the power to make a difference actually is out there. It's everyone. It's education. It's learning how to plan fewer trips wherever you have to go to recycle. But we can continue to recycle somehow if we have a good plan and a good communication system to educate people.
Oh, exactly.
Councilor Egan.
Thanks, Rod, for that review. Another council in 2019 made the decision to go from 4 containers to 2 containers, and I was a part of that council, and you're being very diplomatic to describe the level of discussion that happened during those months when we were talking about that. And so this is not new data. This is not a new dynamic. The information that was presented to the council in 2018 and 2019 from Rod had a similar recommendation, which is that the transportation costs of a 20 to 25% full by weight container is a waste of money. And at the time, there was a number of proposals 6 years ago about illustrating the value of hauling nearly 1/5 of its capacity containers, 20-something miles to Eco Maine. How much sense does that make when we're all feeling good about how much we're recycling? So there was a lot of discussion, including a proposal for a brief moment to completely redo how we were collecting recycling and to have it all concentrated at the transfer station for these exact same reasons. So this is, again, not new ground. The compromise, largely, I think, because of public outcry at the time in 2019 about we're just getting going with this and that, and on a lot of environmental issues, and recycling is a top one. But I think we didn't do a good enough job on educating the general public, who I think would make the right decision. I think the general resident of Freeport would understand if they saw the math and if they saw all of the expenses and the tons of CO2 that are contributed with what is essentially at the top of the pyramid, strictly a convenience priority, is to make it as easy as possible to recycle. And that is a great goal to have. And I think we've established with the point that you just made, which is when we went from 4 to 2, we didn't disrupt the habits of Freeport residents. Freeport residents adapted and continued to recycle at nearly, in fact, even perhaps more of the same rate per household. So I think we can be a little bit more confident in our ability to adapt to these changes and recognize the dollars and cents burden as well as the tons of CO2 emissions that we're contributing with a very inefficient hauling of 1/5 filled containers. We probably need to do a little bit more work on planning for what that volume change in both people and tonnage at the landfill is going to mean. But I'm pretty confident that if we had all of the data out there, that general Freeport residents would understand exactly the direction that we're going and make the right decisions. And flat out, we just need to be throwing away less things, which means, frankly, the behavior of buying those things in the first place needs to start coming up to the top of people's minds. So I'm in favor of the direction that we're headed. We probably need to do a little bit more public education about the reason and the motive. And it's not just a capricious, well, we decided today we're going to take those away. There was a lot of thought going into that and a lot of really good dollar savings. And I think we can have more confidence in the capacity of our residents to adapt to a change in behavior for good financial reasons.
Yeah, well put, John. And one of the biggest concerns I heard coming out of the last conversation was people are going to stop recycling.
Correct.
And that didn't happen. We can't take
happen.
away because people are going to stop. I think we just proved that didn't happen.
Right.
And I think perhaps this is a step, not the end. I think you're right. recycling is important, people will adapt, and we can see how we can meet that adaptation over time. Councilor Pilch?
Oh, yeah, you go ahead first.
Yes.
We've also extended the hours at the recycling center so that you can come in the morning and recycle. You don't have to hold it in your car all day. You don't have to hold it in your house all day. You can just take it to the recycling station on your way to work.
My name's Deb Smith. I live on Lower Flying Point Road. I felt a little bit blindsided by this, but that's my lack of keeping up, I understand. And I do remember when we reduced from 4 24-hour access silver bullets to 2 24-hour access silver bullets. Now we're reducing to 0. That is a whole different scenario, going from 2 to 0 than going from 4 to 2. The way we recycle is when we go by on our way back from the Y, we drop behind the police station, we drop off. We don't go out to the transfer station 3 or 4 times a year. It's out of the way. We don't go there. We put our recyclables in the other thing. We compost a lot, and then we have a small volume hauled away, usually 1 plastic bag a week. One of the little white ones, there's no hope for us. But I think that people are upset in part, not just because you have to go out of the way, but the lack of access. We're looking for 24-hour when we can fit it in going by, which is the way to do it. And I think just saying, well, you have to come to the transfer station during this window of time to this, and you're going to have so many more people going there. I think the model is flawed. I don't think it's got all the right inputs to it. I say that totally unencumbered by knowledge because I haven't seen the study. So I don't know what all it takes into account. But I know that for us, it would be a huge difference to have to make a special trip to go to the transfer station once a week instead of dropping by when it's convenient for us. Even a 24-hour access silver bullet outside the transfer station or anywhere that is a 24-hour access is better than what you're suggesting by a long shot. And I look forward to seeing the model with everything included, but I think you're convoluting I guess one of the questions that I have that I'm sure you've thought of is, so why are you hauling silver bullets that aren't full?
It's because we can't compact them. So we can compact them at the transfer station so you can get more volume.
They're full by volume, not
So
by
they're full
weight.
by volume, but not by weight.
The
Got
one
it.
out here
I got
that
it.
I
I got it.
consistently go to is never available because it's always chock full,
Yep.
but
I
it's
know.
1/5 of the weight that it can carry.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand.
So it has to be hauled.
I understand by weight, but it has to be compacted.
And
So that's
unfortunately,
the
there's a
whole-
lot of
so-
safety
So we're
concerns.
hauling it when they're full by volume, but not by mass.
Yep.
I guess more access would, better access would be one of the things, not to just limit the access to the tiny inconvenient hours that our transfer station has.
It turns out that hauling is expensive dollar-wise, but it's expensive carbon-wise, too.
Oh, sure.
And so-
And I'm sure the heavier compacted ones are more expensive to haul, and there's all sorts of things. It's not more expensive to haul something that's heavy than something
Nope,
that's light.
we get charged a flat rate. It's a per mile rate.
So
Yes, but your gasoline isn't charged that way.
Gotcha.
yeah.
So
So
the cost to do it, bigger model, more goes into it.
So I know we've received, a whole lot of public comments about this via email. mostly echoing a lot of what you're saying as well. So I do want to bring it back up to the dais for discussion. So if you could wrap up your comments, that would be great.
But the other thing is that taxes buy things. I don't know how our taxes compare to, for example, Brunswick's taxes. Brunswick has curbside pickup, they have curbside composting pickup, they have recycling curbside. Their schools are as good as ours. So what's their town budget look like compared to our town budget? And why are we not willing to pay for the recycling? I think that's a bad look at best.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I see that we have sort of two options here right now based on the comment we've heard from many folks from the community is, we continue on our path. We have our data. That data is not going to change. We continue on moving that direction, or we take a step back, have more discussion, do more planning. Those are the options that I can see. So I open it up to council to discuss and give feedback on. Councilor Pilch.
I have a few points, but I'll try and be short. First, I want to offer an apology to FSAB. It kind of came to us sort of through the side door. We were talking about budget and the cost of doing things, and then we got into the discussion and wound up making a preliminary decision, or at least a direction. This is clearly something that is in FSAB's world. They've talked about it extensively before. They've made recommendations to us before. We should consult them. And that's to answer your question about where we go from here. At the end of all the things I'm going to say, my recommendation is, can we get FSAB to engage once again on this? The two things that you've been really good at is the research and then the education, which is where I think we also kind of missed the mark in terms of not explaining why we were doing what we were planning to do, which is coming out tonight, but we should have done that earlier. So that's where I intend to recommend we go. But then as far as my opinion on this stuff, there's the issue of collection in town and the issue of transportation to EcoMaine. So collection, there's definitely a convenience aspect to it, and I was going to bring up that point about 24-hour access versus 40-hour access. And the way people feel about collection is also something that carries weight. You can't necessarily measure it with dollars and cents, but we hear about it in the number of emails we get, what they think of the service that they're getting from town. One of the ways to make the collection more efficient is to send one truck through town gathering everybody's recycling, as opposed to having 3,000 cars drive their recycling to a single point. And I know.
There's a lot of voltage over there.
They have like touching lightning rods lately.
A lot of voltage over there.
Speaking of volumes of emails that we would get. And one of the ideas that had come up before was not putting anybody out of business, but contracting with, say, if we could find a local trash collector who would be willing to do this. So a lot of issues around that. It would be interesting to reopen the discussion and just probe what the options are and survey the public and see if the appetite's changed. And in addition to that, one of the potential benefits, in addition to making the collection more efficient, we want to reduce the overall tonnage, right? What Councilor Egan was saying is it's not just about recycling versus waste, but just less stuff overall. Don't buy as much, don't package as much. And one of the heaviest things that we dispose of is organic material, compost. So if there's ways we can improve that, build upon that, collect that, would love to see recommendations for that. And that's, so anyway, I would love to see all those things. Regarding transportation, I'm going to shift topics for a minute, but I'll tie it back. I want to talk about trains again. So forgive me for the distraction, but while we have guests here, if I were to think about establishing a new train freight service, I would look for something that's heavy, that's generated on a predictable scale, that's generated in sufficient quantity, that's generated in proximity to railroad tracks. So it looks like we have a lot of those things lining up here, and in Falmouth, and in Brunswick, and town south of Portland. And the tracks in Portland are not right adjacent to, but within reasonable proximity of EcoMaine. So I think back to every once in a while when I'd be in the subway at 2 a.m. in New York, and I don't think I was hallucinating, I think there was a train that went by filled with trash. So it might be a little off the wall, but maybe it's not so off the wall. If we had a train that went through at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, stopped at a couple of towns and picked up railroad cars full of trash once a week or so, is that even feasible? Maybe, I know it's the passenger rail authority, not the trash rail authority, but if it's totally out of line, great, we could save a whole bunch of time, but it's worth discussing. Happy to engage there. If you have thoughts, welcome them. If not, I'm happy to call other people who would be more appropriate. But anyway.
All right, fair enough. Councilor Lawrence?
Yeah, well, don't we already have a truck that goes through, doesn't Casella? Don't they recycle? They don't pick up recycling? I think they do.
They do.
Somebody does. I see yellow trash out there. So if it's convenience,
Rod has some insight on
yeah.
that.
Well, I got it. They were probably the dirtiest one, right? Because they don't check it.
And the most
but-
expensive.
But,
I saw that too.
so we're talking about transferring from individual to everybody in town. I take our trash to the transfer station, so I don't have to pay Casella, because I don't want to pay the expense, or I don't have to pay. I used Dan Wentworth, which was fabulous. I mean, if it wasn't out, he'd come and knock on the door and take it. That was, Dan, thank you. That was awesome. But I don't want to have to pay that. Now we're talking about putting it onto my taxes, and then I wouldn't go to the transfer station. I save money that way, because I only have one. We put one bag of trash in every week, and we take our recycling. So
The EcoMaine, as I mentioned before, is a data machine because of the scales, and everything is designated as to its source. The other thing is that amongst the 27 communities that own EcoMaine, every one is different, and we certainly have our own curveballs here in Freeport also. Freeport's one of the few towns that actually offers residents a choice of haulers, and you can look at the data. It's remarkably stable through the years. Dan Wentworth, mom and pop operation, for years has collected 45% of the MSW in town. Dan Wentworth has been able, and now his successor Cody, have been able to hold their own against a $1.5 billion publicly traded company that is a really rough company to deal with, and Danny's been able to hold his own. Anyhow, Wentworth for years has hauled about 45% of Freeport's MSW to EcoMaine. The balance is pretty well equally distributed between either the compactor at the transfer station or Casella. And the proportions are pretty well similar with regard to the recycling. Casella has the 2-unit trucks with the automated lifts, and Casella of last year hauled about 25% of Freeport's recyclables to EcoMaine. Everything else came from the silver bullets and the compactor at the transfer station. So Casella is very visible, and it's been contracted by a lot of communities. I can tell you personally, it's very expensive compared to Wentworth, and even cheaper if you go over to the transfer station and take your own bags over there. And Freeport enjoys the benefit of having some choice like that. But Casella is visible, but they have been for years basically the minor part of the waste handling business here in Freeport.
do we know the silver bullets? One of the big issues that we had was that they were contaminated. Has that changed?
So what I can tell you is that we were getting reports from EcoMaine, but we are not getting those same reports now. My understanding is it's not because the contamination is resolved, it's that they're not generating the reports. So don't have a lengthy database, but I can tell you we are pretty used to seeing strollers. This week alone, we had an outboard motor, a television, and several cases of bourbon candles that were in recycling that we could see and pull out.
Well, densifying the silver bullets could happen if people would break down their cardboard. I mean, there's a lot of management issues that go unmanaged because there's no one there.
I think Mandy wants to say something too, but why don't we?
I must keep looking away when you raise your hand.
Sorry, really quickly. We actually used some of our budget to hire 2 interns to do a study on that with some photographs, just be there. And I was even there for some time, stopping people from throwing their whole bag of recycling with the bag too. And I said, you can't throw the bag in there. And she says, well, what do I do with this now? Well, you have to put it in the trash. So hangers, things from stores in town. So I think that idea of education and how we roll this out as part of a bigger package, and who is using those silver bullets, and is it an incremental thing where you now take away, you didn't see a big change, a little bit increase in trash, do you take away one and retain one of them? And as you're educating the public, as opposed to all of a sudden from going from 2 to 0. And then I don't know if I missed it on the math there. Was it all calculated in what the cost with if all of it's diverted to the transfer station and then goes down there? That was all in. The only thing that we haven't factored in is the potential EPR monies from the state, which we don't know what those are yet. Okay, so I just went.
So,
Can I just point one thing out?
Just go up to the microphone,
Sorry.
please.
Just one thing quick. It's exactly what Mr. Lawrence said, that when 45%, I don't even know how to get to this, 45% of the trash is hauled by Wentworth, and now, I don't know Cody's last name, I apologize. They are significantly less expensive. They are small business. They are small town. They are exactly what I want to support. And my recyclables go into the silver bullet. My compost goes into my compost pile, and Cody now picks up my trash. If people don't have those silver bullets, if I don't have that silver bullet and have to go to the transfer station, the inclination is going to be to take all your stuff there. And if you have to do that to get rid of your recyclables, you're putting somebody out of business.
Councilor Smith has
So, a couple of points, and some of these I've said to folks via email that I've answered extensively this past week. First of all, I appreciate a lot of the points that you raised, Deb. I am an avid Silver Bullet user. I go to the Silver Bullets much more often than I go to the transfer station. However, I think so many of the points that people raise about wanting to keep the silver bullets are actually exactly the problem with the silver bullets. So the 24-hour access, for example, we don't have 24-hour access to dispose of any other waste. All of your other waste either has to go to the transfer station while the transfer station is open, or it has to sit there and wait until someone in comes and picks it up. Those are your two options, and that's it. You don't get other options. But recycling, we've created this opportunity for you to go and drop anything under the cover of darkness, either inside the dumpster or outside the dumpster, and with the expectation that it is now somebody else's problem. So the other piece that keeps coming up is the convenience. And while convenience was an important factor in getting people to recycle 30 years ago, we can't continue to rely on that as the reason why people are recycling. If, in fact, it's not only costing us more, it's adding to the contamination and it's increasing the transportation emissions. So the fact that we don't provide that same convenience for other waste, I think is something that we need to look at. The other piece is about how you dispose of other waste. There are three options in Freeport. You take it to the transportation center yourself, or you get it picked up by one of two haulers, as we've talked about. One of those haulers currently takes recycling. One of them currently doesn't. It is entirely possible that that other hauler could start to pick up recycling. So it's not precluding those other options. But the overall point I want to make is that I think the way we have become reliant on the silver bullets is not sustainable for a number of reasons. First of all, the convenience, I do think, hides the fact that for people, and I've heard many people email the council and say, I take my recycling 2 or 3 times a week because that's how much recycling I'm generating. That's part of the problem because that is what is driving how often those silver bullets have to be transported, because we're filling them up with an enormous amount of volume and it's being transported in an inefficient way. So the fact that we need to reduce our overall waste, and recycling is still waste, that we can't rely on recycling to fix our waste problem, because it's not. It bought us some time, but it's not the ultimate solution. And we really need to focus both individually and collectively on reducing the amount of waste altogether. And I know that this current regime that we're looking at pushing out is not perfect. Silver bullets aren't perfect either. There's not going to be a perfect solution. But I think weighing all of the evidence and all of the data and all of the concerns from all of the stakeholders, there does seem to be a consensus that the time for the silver bullets has run out.
And I do think that kind of, Dan, you made a great point about this is FSAB territory and we should have had that conversation a lot earlier. It seems like that's, from what I'm hearing and sort of the discussion and kind of questions that we're generating up here, it seems like it makes a lot of sense to refer this issue to FSAB. And then what that means is we have to decide how that impacts our current plan. So do we move forward and remove the silver bullets and then still refer this issue to FSAB? Do we pause, refer to FSAB? And that's where I'm seeing head shakes, with some sort of realistic deadline of report back, let's talk about this and see what our options are for best way forward. So, Councilor Lawrence.
Yeah, I just want to say, we talk about education. When we removed them the last time, we had education. And here we are again. They're getting filled up with things that shouldn't be in there. And we had education. We had a lot of we had interns. We had people standing there. People are standing there, it doesn't happen. We can't do that sustainably. We can't do that all year round. So but
make it one bullet, 24-hour access of camera.
So I want to go back to the
it.
suggestion that I just made and would like to see if there's some consensus. So, Councilor Pillsbury.
Yeah, I think that's the right course of action. Can we broaden the scope a little bit to include a brief analysis on the impact at the transfer station, or what we project? I mean, maybe FSAB can just work with Earl. Because if we don't look holistically at all the impacts, we're just going to keep getting the arguments and discussion points will just shift. So I think if we want to try to resolve this as best we can and use data to drive the decision making, it needs to be a holistic view. And so I think we just need to be mindful of, so we're having the same discussion across all stakeholders.
Absolutely. Councilor Brown.
I agree with that entirely. It seems to me this is an opportunity to learn how to adapt. This is nothing compared to things that we're going to have to adapt to. So I think the spirit of community, which Freeport's known for, we've got smart people here who actually have huge history that hopefully you can advise us occasionally as needed. But education is really important, and I need to be re-educated from time to time. I don't remember things that are done 5 years ago necessarily, but I think we have an opportunity, and I think we need to look at it as an opportunity.
Is there any other suggestions other than the one that's on the table right now? Councilor Egan.
The suggestion on the table is, can you be succinct about that? I'm not sure what we're actually saying we agree with.
Absolutely. To refer this to FSAB with a realistic timeline of a report back and sort of pause our efforts in removing the silver bullets until that analysis is complete, with making sure we are looking at the holistic impact on the transfer station as well.
Can we put a time frame on what that realistic
Yes, which I
feedback
think
is?
I would love input from Mandy, the manager.
We don't meet in July and August.
Can you guys head up to the, sorry.
So I would just ask, Mandy, what do you think about the end of October? That would give September and October.
One meeting, because we
You don't meet in
we meet
September?
at the end of September, and then
Yep.
we meet at the end of October.
Yep.
But if you want information by the end of October, we would only have one.
Yeah,
meeting
no, I would,
that together for
It's too
you.
late.
So that's pretty
too
quick,
late for
because
me.
we don't meet in July and August. That's the only thing.
so by saying by the end of October, I mean, you would have your October meeting too.
Fourth Wednesday
Yep.
of the month is when we meet.
Is there a smaller group of members that might be able to take this on as a project?
We are looking at divvying up, because we have some things that we presented to you as the priorities and the things that we were going to work on. And so we were looking at divvying up some of that. This just got at, a discussion point. So we haven't really put that in yet. So we can't have a discussion again until September about that, because we can't, just form protocol.
Right.
We can't meet before that, but, so.
Well, we could do the other thing and see what we said, remove them in August, and if they meet and they can tell us, okay, we can always have them come back. It's not a hard thing to put them right back where they were and start it up again. And that gives them the summer to August, and then we can do the research, because it's not going to be done till October. We're not going to report till November. That's what, another 4 or 5 months that we're paying to ship air down to Eco Maine.
Are you imagining removing two of them, or just one of them, and
Both of
leaving
them.
the West Street and seeing what the impact is?
No, I just remove both of them, because
okay.
we're just.
We know what the impact is.
We know what the impact is. We did it once. It didn't, recycling didn't go down tremendously, and the transfer station seemed to handle it pretty well. I mean, and now we have extended hours, so we can get more through over a longer period versus in a very short period of time. Two, it'll save us money, and I think this is where we're going. I mean, I see that right now, that's where we're going, because the dynamics have changed. The cost to recycling has gone way up.
Oh, yeah, and I don't think FSAB would dispute any of that. I think everything that was brought up here tonight is entirely accurate. And I think the convenience, we have been put into a different system, and we need to adapt to new systems. But sometimes the jarring effect and the feedback and it can be hard.
Change is hard.
Yeah.
So
but
this is change.
right. So it's
so
systemic change is a good way to look at it. Yeah.
I don't know if this is systemic change, but because it's two items, but change is hard, and I prefer to rip the Band-Aid off instead of, let's do
there's
this.
that.
And then we're going to be here, we remove one, we're going to be here again in a year doing the same thing.
Well, we could get back to you before a year, absolutely. We could get back to you soon.
I want to hear what
So
Councilor Pillsbury has to say.
I don't think we should entertain the thoughts of engaging in this dialogue a year from now.
Definitely not.
I think that
We'll be much quicker than
I
that.
think that 4 months to me feels like too long, but I am sensitive to the fact of your meeting schedule. I'd offer the suggestion that do as much advance work as you possibly can, so that your September meeting is very targeted and effective, and the work can then be underway, and you can have something guaranteed to be back by October. I wouldn't want to delay it longer, but I am very sensitive to the fact that Making a rash decision now, while we may have an idea of where we're going, I think it adds a lot of sideways energy to the conversation, and I think it puts us farther from getting a community-wide solution. And if we want to be contentious about this, there's one way to go. I think that in the grand scheme of things, we're addressing a problem, and a matter of a couple months, if we get the solution right, I think is better spent than trying to do things too quickly and unearthing a whole other set of problems.
Yep.
That is my personal opinion. I'm up for discussion on this, but that's what I would suggest.
All right.
We've been doing this for 6 years. Since I've been on the council, this was the first thing that came up. So I don't think it's a rash decision. I know that some people do, but this has been on the radar for 6 years. So that's all I'll say.
I'd say the email reaction tells me that a lot of people are jarred by this, and my respect for the folks who elected me commands that I listen to them and come up with a good plan that takes their thoughts and feelings into consideration. I myself am going to go home tonight and think of specific things that I'm going to do to change my schedule to go to the transfer station, because it strikes me that that probably is a direction we'll be going. It's not that painful.
I go to the transfer station. I do.
Well, all right.
Great place to hang out.
I know, actually. I think we should do more things at the transfer station.
Do we have general consensus at this point? We're gonna keep it up to the days right now. We can touch base after.
Sorry, I thought I got acknowledged, but if...
Can you please go up to the microphone then, please?
I thought we were talking here.
Yeah, so this is the last comment we'll have from the public.
Sorry, I misunderstood. When you redo your model, could you take into account the fuel oil for all the car trips and all the
Yes.
side, which and the heavier transfer of the fully laden vehicle? It may be minuscule, but
Yep, thank you. Is there general consensus on this direction? Councilor Smith.
Reluctant. I'm with Chip. I think we should stay with our plan, but won't bark about waiting to get a little more time to. I firmly believe we can bring a lot more consensus from the community if we shared the information about where this is coming from and the numbers behind it, because I think I think it's lack of that detail that is fueling the response. So I think we can do a lot more for that, and I would hope that we can work together with FSAB on that.
I would just say, in relation to FSAB, I understand the meeting schedule. I'm also very aware that we change our meeting schedule all the time because things come up that need to be dealt with. And I'm not suggesting you necessarily need to meet as a whole committee, but I think the point about advanced work, I'm hoping perhaps you, the chairs, could figure out what you think the process of collecting that information would be and maybe assign that out so that that does come to the September meeting and you can look at it and analyze it and then possibly raise some questions so that by the October meeting you'll have a recommendation.
Would that be your middle of the month, October meeting? Or?
No. I believe what Sophie proposed was just by the end of October, you would have a recommendation. We wouldn't look at it till November.
And then it could go to your first November.
That's great, because the first week in November, we don't have a meeting. We have one the following week, and then we're off, right?
Month of November, nothing happens.
Yeah, that's true. So that would be a problem, schedule.
Yeah, then we would have the two meetings, and that would be helpful. Yeah, because then we would have our September and October meeting, and then get that to you right at the end of the month.
So I think what I hear is general agreement that FSAB should be involved. And no matter what we do here, there should be involvement in some study and research and understanding the impacts. What we don't have consensus on is what that means in the meantime. So I'm going to throw out a motion to pause the removal of the silver bullets pending input from the Freeport Sustainability Advisory Board for, what was the last timeline? Was it still end of October? The end of October.
I'd second that.
Okay. So all those in favor of pausing the removal of the silver bullets?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, so that was 5-2. Did you get that, Caroline? Okay. Thank you.
Could I just add one thing? That the most important aspect of this may not be the knowledge part, it's the message part. And so the sooner that can be disseminated to all of us, I think the better its effect will be.
I have just a question that might, again, accelerate some data for FSAB that perhaps the staff might be able to take on. And we can talk about the details of this offline, but I would be very interested in trying to get data from users of the silver bullets about how they manage their other solid waste, how often they're coming, what they think they would do when the silver bullets go away. Is there a way that we could do an online survey that people could participate in?
Sure.
We can talk more about the details, but I'm thinking that something that even if we got some input from FSAB into what those questions could be, we could help facilitate some more data.
All right, so we'll move on.
I really think that was going to take 10 minutes.
I saw that too. So now we'll move on to item 3 under other business, which is the discussion of town hall operational hours. And Sophie, I have that. Oh, I guess it's Caroline.
That is Caroline.
Thank you all for embarking on that discussion.
Just so folks know, while Caroline's getting ready, Rod has graciously offered to continue crunching the data for us.
I also want to interrupt while they're still in the hallway. Thank you, Rod and Mandy, for being here. Thank you.
All right, you ready to move on? So we are here, I'm here representing the manager team of Sophie, myself, and Courtney Sparks, our Human Resources Director, to discuss with you hours of operation at Town Hall. So one of the things, our priorities for the council when Sophie came on board was looking at municipal operations in all areas of the town of Freeport and finding ways to improve the level of service delivery and efficiency in municipal operations. So we have done that. We've made some changes at the recycling facility recently. We went to a 4-day work week. I think overall it's been well received by the public and the employees. We are starting to dig into that a little bit further, and we're going to be tracking the usage to understand when our residents, our peak times are at that facility. Prior to that, I think just before Sophie came, we made some operational changes to the administrative staff at Public Works in the Highway Division, where we switched to a 4-day work week. That was also well received, and we haven't gotten much negative feedback on that. So it's been a number of years since we revisited the hours of operation at Town Hall. A lot of towns are moving to a 4-day work week. They think that's a new great idea. Freeport's been doing this for probably 10 or 12 years now. Contrary to popular belief, we were one of the leaders in this. I would say the hours of operation vary. There's a few towns like Yarmouth that still has an abbreviated 5th day. Some towns open at 7, some open at 8, but most towns are regularly closing, 5 o'clock. So we looked at Town Hall. Our number one priority is always increasing level of service to our customers, whether it be tourists, residents, visitors, or our business community. And we also want to make sure that we're doing that in an efficient and cost-effective way. And then a big concern for all municipalities, not just Freeport, is being able to attract and retain employees. Next slide. So as a reminder, Town Hall is currently open Monday through Thursday, 7:30 to 6. We're open for 42 hours per week to our community. Our staff work 37 and a half hours per week. So that's primarily our hourly staff, which are most of our frontline staff. We expect that department heads will go over that. We're quite often at night meetings or meetings outside of normal business hours. But 37 and a half hours a week, we try really hard to keep our payroll dollars in line so we don't incur overtime. So if somebody has to stay late or has a night meeting, we do expect that they will make it up to keep the payroll in line. We actually have been monitoring foot traffic here, and the last hour of the day is pretty quiet. In a lot of cases, we have baked goose eggs where nobody comes in. One of the other observations is that we do have staggered work schedules because, again, we're open more than people work. So when you come in, you will notice that some departments sometimes only have one person. On Monday, if you come in, especially for the last hour of the day, there's a lot of people here. Tuesday, the council likes to meet regularly, so there's a lot of people here. By Wednesday or Thursday, a lot of our staff has already put in long days. Our hourly employees are over on hours, so people will need to leave early, or because we strive to maintain a good work-life balance for our department heads, if they've had a few night meetings, we will encourage them to go home and do what they need to do outside of work. So as the week goes on, particularly towards the end of the workday, you will see reduced staffing coverage at Town Hall. Next slide. I think you skipped one. Okay, so one of the items we're here tonight is to talk about some consideration of adjusting town hall hours. And so the idea that we've come up through working with staff would be to switch the schedule to a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday from 7:30 to 5. And we would propose that Tuesday we go to 7:30 to 6. We already know that on Tuesdays, because the council typically meets once a month, we already have twice a month. You can go to once a month if you want. We typically already have a lot of staff in the building and a lot of people that come in for meetings. So we felt like if we're going to have a late night, because we're already open and people are already coming, that seemed to make sense. This would be a reduction in hours that were open to the public. We would drop 3 hours, so we would go down to 39 hours. That would build in a half an hour lunch break for our staff each day, which we're required to give them. And it would also build another half an hour each week into the schedule. And that would allow time, department heads, they're probably going to be at a meeting, so they would make it up. It would allow our hourly staff a little bit of time each day to come in and get ready. So when the doors open at 7:30, they're ready to go, or time to close down. We think there's quite a few benefits to this new schedule. Number one is the consistent staffing. From a management perspective, when all your staff has to reduce their hours and work different schedules so they don't go over 37 and a half hours, it can get confusing with tracking and accountability. We also feel like this will get all of our staff on a consistent schedule, so when you come in, you won't just see one person in planning or codes, for example. You should have almost full staff. We think this will lead to increased service delivery for our residents, so if they come in the last hour of our day, whatever it will be, there'll hopefully be more than one person in a department there to wait on them. And we also feel like this is a big benefit to our employees. 4-day work week sounds really awesome, but I'll tell you, when you have a family and young kids and you drive half an hour plus, like a lot of our employees, it makes for a really long day. So we have a lot of employees that are 30 to 60 minutes from Town Hall. If you've tried to find childcare lately, it is a challenge. If you can find childcare from 7:30 to 6 at a decent rate, let me know. And we do have a lot of employees that actually have second jobs. And although our first priority is the town of Freeport, we need to be realistic that in some of our lower wage positions, they do work other jobs. And then, people have lives. We're not here all the time. There are outside of work commitments. And so we feel like those are benefits to employees. And we also feel like that would put us more in a level playing field if someone's looking to come work in Freeport, which is awesome, a great place to work, or go to another town because we have the consistent hours. So we do feel like there are some key components, if we go this route, to set us up for success. So we have come a long way. We have this new website, which you can see a little glimpse on the top. We have a communications director. And so continuing to push out all of the online services we offer is key to this. We just went live officially today, but really last week, on online permitting for a planning code enforcement department. And if you go to the website, you will see that long list, which I'm not going to read for you, but we actually do already offer quite a few online services that you can do from home. Some of our department heads or staff, if you've gotten an email from them recently, you'll notice you now have the ability, kind of like with the lending tool library, you can go in and schedule a meeting with them at a time that works good for you. So we would see increasing that. And then we have talked to some department heads like the clerks in finance who really have peak times, like elections or when tax payments are due, when we know we're going to see increased foot traffic. So we might, at peak times, need to look at extending office hours and going to a little more staggering schedule in those departments if the need is warranted. So that's a snapshot of what we're here to discuss with you tonight. Happy to answer questions. And if there's other things you'd want more information on, would love to hear that from you.
Any questions? Councilor Egan.
It's a very thorough presentation. I think it seems extremely reasonable, and then particularly not on this one, but on the one before, which is this is a tool to help you attract and retain employees. I think that's really important. I don't want to undervalue that one just because it's at the bottom of your list. I think that's really critical. And I know from previous experience with the analytics that you and our town manager go through that this is a well thought out proposal. So I think it's very reasonable and support it.
How are we going to measure success?
To me, we would measure it in-person success, having customers come in and not having to wait in lines or having people here and present to answer their questions. Really, that level of service delivery is our priority, which I think we will quickly observe right away. It is a real challenge on the outskirts of a day when we're open longer than we have people here.
Is there going to be a formal method for that data collection? Because what I'm thinking of is that change is hard. People will have anecdotal complaints or thoughts around this, and the defense against that is data. And if we're prepared to show that people are getting served in a quicker way, or we're diverting routine things to the website or other ways to look at it, and we can say, here you're concerned, but here are the reasons why this change has been beneficial to the community.
So I think we could do that a couple of ways. Number one, all of the back office applications that you see, there's an online way to do it. There, we have metrics and tracking how many of each of those things we've done. I know that currently less than 20% of our motor vehicle registrations, which is a lot of what people come in, that's one of the drivers, are done online. I think there's a lot of room for growth in that because we have those same people paying with their debit card here, which is the same cost as to do it online. So I think driving that, we would be able to see that. I think that the other place that we get a lot of online is a lot of in-person is in code, and we've already gotten a lot of feedback that it is frustrating for people that they're having to deliver things in person, pay with a check in person, and then wait until we have a code officer ready to manage their piece, so their permit. So I think that online permitting will speed a lot of things up. I also think you can survey and get some of that. I would be really interested to try to figure out if we could do a metric on wait times or how many times people get turned around. Unfortunately, we just kept track of how much foot traffic we had during the day. But when you only have one person working the counter, it really, honestly, doesn't really depend on what time of day because of the segregation of duties that we have out there. If you only have one person waiting the counter, there can be a long line, whereas if there are two, that goes a lot quicker. I don't know exactly how we measure that, but I'm sure, I know we have some smart people that could maybe help me with that.
One other thing we're going to be doing soon, as soon as they get delivered, we're going to be adding 2 new public terminals at Town Hall. One of them is so when people come in for their first time, we can have a staff person walk them through how to use the online permitting system for code enforcement and planning. So hopefully next time, if they choose to, they can do it at home instead of having to come in. And we're also going to have a second terminal so we can help people that are waiting in line use some of the online features. So again, they will be able to get handheld to do it the first time and then be able to do it from home. The one thing I did forget to mention here is if we go this route, we're also not talking about tomorrow because we know change is hard. We know people need a heads up and time to adjust. So we were thinking extensive public notification and potentially fall. We would look at rolling something like this out because we do feel like people deserve advance warning. And in the summer, they want to come in the day they're leaving for vacation and do their boat. And so we felt like we would need a little bit of time before we rolled this out.
Is there a sign or anything on the door that mentions online systems? If I come in, the town hall's closed, but I see that.
I don't think we do. I think, we've struggled with communications. We're super fortunate now that we have a communications director. He's been helping us online to promote these online services. There's a new video going live. I think it's already posted on how to use iWork. So, I think that's something we really need to amp up, and that's a great idea. We should start putting more notices for that stuff here.
Councilor Bilch.
I'm a little nervous that the data we collect might not capture the people who don't show up. So if my only free time is to come to town hall between 5 and 6, and then I can't come to town hall between 5 and 6 because it's closed, and then I have to rearrange whatever in my life and make it inconvenient, so I show up at 4:30, but I don't wait very long, that's going to look like a giant success in our metrics because there's no wait time. But reality is that person is very unhappy. So I am concerned about reducing the level of service for residents. I get the benefits on the employee side, and I get that there's not a ton of residents that are here between 5 and 6, but there are inevitably some, given that a lot of people do work till 5 on their own. So my question is, since most of the counters have more than one person serving them, could you stagger and say your shift is 7:30 to 4 and my shift is 9 to 6? And there's overlap during the busiest parts of the day, but at the edges of the day, there's at least one person there, so we don't have to reduce service and we could still give employees the benefit of not.
That's what we have been doing, but we don't feel like that's providing the best service we could to our customers. If we get a rush, there is one person and they are standing there waiting
But only during
in
the
line.
edges of the day, right? The first hour.
Yeah, I would say like code enforcement, the busiest hours of the day would be the morning, and we have a lot of staff there. The end of the day, they don't get as many people. But yeah, if we have one person, we can deliver a service. They might have to wait, or the department head or wherever they want to come in and see might not be there.
Any other questions for Caroline? Okay. Anything else to add?
I guess a little bit of feedback as if this is a direction that the council wants us to keep heading and try out or make official, or if you're like, no way, not going to fly. Because we have put a lot of thought into it. Or on the flip side, if we don't have enough data for you to make a decision, what would some of those statistics be so we can be collecting them and come back in a few months with data that you would find more helpful?
I would ask for the people that do come between 5 and 6, in addition to just measuring the number of them, can we just talk to them and say, like, what brings you to town hall at this hour, and what would you think if we closed at 5?
We could if it doesn't interfere with the service we're providing.
After you're done with the transaction.
Yeah, we definitely could gather more information from the last hour of the day.
We could refer to FSAP and see what they think. Yeah, just surveying those people at the end of the day, I think would be helpful for me.
Yeah, I don't know what other data would be compelling. I understand Matt's point about having data is very helpful. I think the reality is that people do adapt to what is available. I would say it's incredibly inconvenient not to have the town hall open on Fridays. But there are lots of good reasons why town hall is not open on Fridays, and I don't come on Fridays because town hall is closed. As opposed to, I had a very odd conversation one time with a cashier at Market Basket asking me why I was there so late. And I said, because you're open this late. If you closed an hour earlier, I would have been here an hour earlier. So I do think that the beginning of the day is, I know, particularly busy for codes. I almost wonder whether for, to balance that out, whether 8 to 5:30 might actually be better for the average person, but I am not really making that as a suggestion. I just think that I do think going more to online services is probably much more convenient than coming in for a lot of people. And for the people that do want to come in, they will. I don't think the same people are coming day after day to get services. So the thing that they need to do to register to get the permit, it is most likely a one-off that's happening once a year for them, that particular transaction, and that scheduling is probably pretty flexible.
I do think with the online permitting, some of our contractors will be really happy that they can apply for electrical permits online and pay online. So I do think in code enforcement, we will most likely see a decrease in the morning foot traffic. But one of the reasons we kept the 7:30 is because most people don't start their workday before 8. And so we felt that would give them the ability to come before they go to work. They might not be able to come after work, but they could come in the morning.
I think that's critical, to have at least some part of the day where people can come in when they're not working.
And they would have Tuesday, and then they could come to the council meeting.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I think you're spot on, Counselor Smith. People do adapt, and I appreciate the effort to create more of a balance and more effective workplace for folks who work here. So,
One last comment. Is there any, so it would be, town hall would be open 39 hours a week? I mean, is there any psychological impact of it not being 40? I mean, it just stands out to me, and I don't want to give people a reason to complain, but that does seem seems a little odd.
Well, everyone's kind of working, well, unless you're a salaried employee, most are working 37 and a half hours a month or a week.
So just,
No, I know, I get what you're saying.
Either way, I'm just, it's stuck.
I had the same feeling, and I'm like, well, my wife works 37 and a half. Everyone I know that's hourly works 37 and a half, so.
just a scrubbing of the internet. If you look at the communities around us, Brunswick next week moves to Monday through Thursday, 7:30 to 4:30. Falmouth is Monday through Thursday, 7 to 5. Yarmouth still is Monday through Thursday, 8 to 4, and Friday, 8 to 12. Gorham, 8 to 4, Monday through Wednesday, and Thursday open till 6:30, closed Friday. So I do think municipalities are kind of starting to shrink, and I think part of the reason for that is the online service. And I hazard to suggest that when I was in another community that we changed, we had by appointment. And a lot of time, the by appointment works because somebody calls and you either can walk them through what they need somewhere else, but also to come up with a time, oftentimes can dovetail. So we try to be flexible. I mean, we've issued marriage licenses on Saturdays before because there was a crisis and it needed to happen. I'm not suggesting there should be a run on that now, but I think there is a balance, but it's I do think change is hard, but I also think we want to remain as competitive as we can and also find that balance with service to the resident.
It's dangerous to look at peer communities because we look at them and then they in turn look at us and say, well, Freeport's now closing at 5, so we can close at 4. Well, they're closing at 4, well, we can close at 3. It's obviously a slippery slope exaggeration, but overall, this is not a hill I'm going to die on, and I love our employees and I want to do the right thing by them. Big picture, I'm a little concerned that our municipal budget's going up by 9%, and the perception is that we're making things more difficult for people. We're taking away your options for recycling, we're reducing the hours time. I get there are little things and people will adapt, and in the grand scheme of things, people will survive, no matter what we decide. But the overall perception gives me pause. I'd like to say if we're keeping and/or improving services and managing things fiscally responsible, it seems like it's just a dangerous place for us to put ourselves, in my opinion.
Rip the Band-Aid off.
Chip, you and your Band-Aid.
Yeah, I had a lot of them.
Do you want more?
No, I mean. So we put other business out here to talk about things that are not ready to just immediately take to vote. The hope with other business is that staff gets some direction. Is this a no-go? Is this, sure, let's be working towards doing something in the fall with this? Is it, we really want more data, whatever that data might look like? But from the staff perspective, we evaluated, we see an issue, we're bringing it to your attention. You don't have to agree with us. That's not your job. Your job is to find that balance. But it would be helpful to at least get, like, are we going away and coming back? Are we going away and never coming back? Are we starting to step towards an implementation? That's ultimately, this takes a council vote.
I think we go for it. That's why we hire you two to come up and with these. So I think we try it.
Could we go for it while running a pilot and assess if the wheels just fall off or if it's a rousing success?
So that's what we did with the transfer station. What we said was we would do it for, I think it was 3 months. So if we did like a October 1st to December 31st, that gives you a quarter to test it and see what the feedback is. So that would be essentially an option. The one thing I will say, I paid attention to Brunswick. Brunswick is really working to improve their communications, and so I've been trying to dial in and pay attention to the strides that they're making. When they made the decision to change hours, that was a multi-months of notification to the community. It was postcards. It was come to town hall and tell us why this isn't a great idea. It was all of that before it actually implemented. So I know there will be people in Brunswick that are like, what? I can't go in on Fridays. But they would have had to not be paying attention to any social media or reading their mail or any of that to know. So I do think that time piece of making a decision to implementation is important. And it also is important that we have flyers on, click like the video on how to do iWork types of stuff, so that if you need tutorials to be able to go through these systems, you'll be able to get step-by-step instructions and that kind of stuff.
Could I get some clarity on what was just asked? Are we talking about trying something? Because the thought of offering something to the employees and then taking it back strikes me as not the way to go.
I I get what you're saying, and I think that we have amazing employees. I also think if packaged correctly to say, council is not 100% sure, they're a little bit nervous, and to be able to build the body to make people feel more comfortable with this, we're going to run a 3-month test. It's exactly the message I gave to folks at the recycling center was, do not get comfortable with this. We are going to come back and review this in July, which we're going to come back at the end of July and review this with you to make sure you're okay with us making the change to the recycling, because that also will take a vote of council.
So it would be handy to have some data that was based on a transaction that took place, and then the person was asked in a smart way, their schedule, how would they adapt to it an hour earlier or whatever. But some data would be handy.
So a pilot with some data collection? Yeah.
We call it a pilot, say this is what we're doing, and then we pivot back if we're not comfortable with it.
Well,
I mean,
I guess I would look at it as, this is the direction we feel like we're going to move, and unless something drastic, unless we find out that this was a severe mistake, but I think the pilot is more to Sophie's point of like, to the employees, we're going to test this out, so don't start moving your life around. Let's see how this works. Let's give it our full effort to try to make it feasible, but know that this could go back to the way it was. But I think that if we want to go down that route, we need to be comfortable with the fact that we're moving toward a different goal.
So I do have a little bit of concern with the trial, because we do have a number of hourly employees that this is going to these consistent hours is going to cause them to rearrange their life a little bit, their outside of work commitment, their childcare, their other things, because they're not going to be able to have a shorter day. They're going to have to be here till 5. So I think we can do it. We just need to be aware of that this trial could impact people. The other idea I think we could do is we could go away and come back in a month and really focus on monitoring and surveying those end-of-day customers to get the feedback, if that would be helpful for the council, and come back and check in. Because even if we do a trial, like, we're still at October, December. So pushing the data for another month and coming back and seeing what we get kind of keeps us on the same timeline without altering everybody's schedules. And then we don't hire someone and be like, well, right now you're going to work this, but then you're going to work that, and then we don't know. Because that, to John's point, doesn't really help with the attraction, which we're hiring.
On one hand, I'm like, okay, I don't think we're ready to make this decision yet. Seems like there's still a lot of questions, and we need to think about what data we want and what that would look like to collect. On the other hand, I'm like very aware of you're making this decision to benefit the people that work here. So I don't know what my point is, but these are two very different.
It's hard. You want to do both. You want to balance the community and you want to balance the employees. It's not just about one. I think there's pros and cons to each. I live in a different municipality. We changed hours. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't get there because I have to work till 6. I loved the idea that Sophie brought from another community, that you can schedule an appointment. Because if I knew I could go into my town hall at 4:30, I'd have an appointment, I could be out. Like, that's not a deal breaker. The day I went, that wasn't an option. I stood in line for a long time. So I think that's part of the reason that we felt some of those other tools were so important to the success of this program.
So Egan?
I'm old-fashioned, so I'm thinking of a postcard that people actually hold, either at the counter or at the door or something like that. And we have a big sign. We can put Pete on this for what's the best way to get someone's attention, that said, we're considering, and put the hour changes up there. Tell us what you think. And there's a pencil and a card, and people can give a little bit of feedback about the hours. And I think it needs to be like 3 things or less in order for people to just fill it out in 25 seconds and then go. Nobody's going to sit there and go through 12 questions. Or some people would, but not everybody. And that way we can get a sense of how delicate the 6 o'clock versus 5 o'clock proposed time change is from, and I'm suggesting maybe we do this through September and take a look at what that says before we implement it. And I think we can tell the staff that the council discussed this at length and that there's support for, or at least some support for, what the proposal is doing for optimizing staff coverage, but we're just a little bit nervous about the change to the general public. I think that's the message.
Yeah, I don't think I want council to understand that part of the reason we feel comfortable coming to have this conversation with council, where you're publicly balancing the desires, the needs of the community and our employees, is because our employees understand that council wants the best that they can give them and maintain that balance. So, yeah, I think they'll appreciate that we're looking into it.
I support that idea of doing some sort of easy, not a conversation at the counter, because that feels a little clunky, but some sort of comment box or way for people to give feedback.
Tell us what you think.
Yeah.
I think we could easily do that. Pete could come up with a flyer with a QR code or website if people want to fill it out online, or we have the comment boxes. We could do the poster and come back to you at the end of September. If you do go this route, you did budget this year to do some mailings. So I think we could adequately get notice out if you go this route later in the fall or next winter.
If only you could find a way to incorporate dots into our feedback.
No more dots.
All right, is that
I like the yellow.
satisfied? Okay, we're good. Moving on to the
Those are so
last.
2024, John.
Moving on to the last item on the agenda. So this is the update on the comprehensive plan adoption process. So Caroline, this is also you.
There's only one slide for this one, Sophie.
Great.
PDF.
Oh, it's right there.
There it is.
It looks a little washed out, but, okay. So you guys wanted an update on the comprehensive plan. So futurefreeport.com, that is our comp plan website. We've had a draft of the comprehensive plan posted there pretty much since spring, since it was last before council. Today was the last date for public comment on that draft. That's just draft one. There's still plenty of time if you want to weigh in. Tomorrow, the planning board has a meeting. They are going to be reviewing any comments that came in through the website, which was just a handful, to be honest, and the comments that we got back from the state. The state found our comprehensive plan consistent with the Growth Management Act, but they did have some tweaking, like, oh, you should have this list of vernal pools, and your data was old, so we forgot to tell you this type of bird is there. So it's really kind of data or add-on. So we are going to integrate that into the comprehensive plan. It's nothing substantive. It doesn't change any of the intent. It just adds some clarity. So because those comments are minimal, we think that the planning board most likely tomorrow will be ready to move forward with the remainder of the comprehensive plan process. In Freeport, the way we're set up, the planning board does all the heavy lifting and all the work and delivers a pretty package to the council. So an important part of that step is having 30-day notice that we are going to be having a hearing on our comprehensive plan. So the planning board will meet tomorrow night. If they give North Star and staff the directive to make the minor adjustments, they will do that, and we hope to have a final draft of the comprehensive plan posted on the Future Freeport website by Monday. We have set this up to run the public hearing ad this weekend so that at the August 6th meeting, we can meet that 30-day notice period and the planning board can have their public hearing on the comprehensive plan. At that meeting, we expect that they will probably be ready to take action, just due to all the public input and council and planning board involvement in the process this far, where they will hopefully make a recommendation that the council adopts the plan. If they don't, if we need to revisit, this plan won't go forward. But in the perfect scenario, They would make the recommendation on August 6th. Because you don't have a second regular meeting, that would be coming to you first on September 2nd to set the public hearing on the final adoption of the comprehensive plan for you to potentially have that public hearing on the 16th of September. And if you were to adopt it then, we would be all done. The planning board would start using that tool immediately. It would be effective, and it would be the guiding document for all of our land use and zoning decisions, because any decisions the planning board makes for changes to the land use ordinances need to be in general harmony with the comprehensive plan. Happy to answer any questions you have. And the one thing I would like to get some feedback from the council on, I wasn't planning to have North Star at one of your meetings in case you had technical questions, probably the 16th, because that's when we think the public would come, but I'd love feedback from you.
On the 16th, is that town council holds public hearing? Okay.
No, it says-
Oh,
It says
sorry,
sets
that's a
twice. I
cut and
wasn't sure
paste
why we
error.
were-
That's me.
There was a toggle one.
No,
Set it
so
on the second. Okay.
16th should be having the hearing.
The public hearing. Great,
Yep.
thank you.
Is that North Star attendance, is that in the contract, or is that an extra fee?
I think it was part of the contract, but if they're not needed, I'm sure they would love the night off. They're working on some other projects for us. So if you don't feel the need to have them here, then I would uninvite them. I mean, I would feel very differently if the council hadn't been so involved, but pretty much all of you have been at almost every meeting and public workshop that we've had. So if you don't feel the need, that is totally fine.
I don't feel the need necessarily, yeah. All right, yeah, give them the night off.
Okay.
Any questions? I just want to reiterate that this was faster than we expected. The state reviewed more quickly, so thanks for the updated schedule.
Yeah, I sent the state a thank you note. Their turnaround on this was so quick. Because we had advertised leaving public comment open till July 1, we paused and held true to that. But if we hadn't given that extra time, we could have been to you quicker because they were so fast.
Okay.
Make a motion to adjourn?
I would second that motion, provided that everybody remembers to email Caroline if they want to bring some food on
Yes.
July 15th.
And did we still have Chalmers on or no? Chalmers was attending via the Zoom tonight. All right, but all in favor of adjourning? Aye.
You're very